like to call to order this meeting of August 14th and welcome to everyone and invite everyone to stand for the pledge. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I believe we have our translator here this evening.
Sí, buenas tardes y bienvenidos de parte de la Junta Directiva del Distrito Escolar de Santa Bárbara. Si hay alguien que necesite la ayuda de un intérprete, por favor levante la mano para darle un audífono. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Headsets are available for the hearing impaired as indicated on the slide. And you may indicate if you are in need of a headset. And there is no closed session action to announce. Acceptance of donations is the next item on the agenda. And I hate to single out a single donation because there are so many very generous people in the community, but I'd like to note the $50,000 donation for the elementary instrumental music program from the Santa Barbara Education Foundation.
I move to accept with gratitude.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
So a motion by Ms. Malikoff, second by Ms. Parker, to accept our gifts with appreciation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes 5-0. Our superintendent's report.
Yes, the first thing I want to report on this evening was a wonderful commemoration of Lincoln Elementary School. Let's first step back in history. In the 1860s, a time when residences were widely scattered, 243 Santa Barbara students, that was about 20% of the school-aged children, were enrolled in one of two dilapidated one-room schoolhouses, one for boys and one for girls. In 1866, this is 6 years later, 2 years after a severe drought ended and the economy was beginning to bounce back, the Santa Barbara School District was established. That is over 140 years ago. The public was interested in improving school facilities and the quality of education. By 1970, this is just 4 years after that date, the public was ready to support a new school on Coda Street. By November 23, 1870, the cornerstone was laid by the Masonic Lodge for a new two-story structure with 4 rooms on each floor and proper ventilation. It was called Lincoln School, and it was built, Mr. Hetjunk, listen to this, it was built for $16,000. It was the first brand new school in a brand new school district. Lincoln Elementary School served our community until it was demolished in 1979. We are honored to have Lincoln graduates with us tonight. In fact, if any members of tonight's audience attended Lincoln School, please stand up for a moment so that we can see who you are. And I would like specifically to have Bill. So the two Angies as well. Please come forward. Mrs. Campiatelli graduated in the class of 1934 and was recognized by the American Legion as the outstanding girl in her class. She has a medal to prove it. Bill Sims and Angie Shaw, one-time Lincoln students, were co-chairs on a committee that recently recognized the importance of Lincoln School in the community's history. They're here to tell us about a tile project. Bill?
Thank you, Superintendent Sarvis and the rest of the board members. Just a little bit more history about Lincoln School because I don't want to pass over this lightly. Lincoln School was the first co-educational school in Santa Barbara. When it first was organized in 1869 in an old 2-story house, 4 rooms on each floor, it was the beginning of the Santa Barbara High School on the 2nd floor. Later, the Santa Barbara High School moved to Victoria and Chapala Street, where we used to have a big barn and everything there and classrooms. Later, it moved over to Anapamu and Quantina. Lincoln School was torn down and raised from the dead 3 times during the history of Lincoln School of 110 years. And during that time, a lot of students went there. Now, history will not tell the truth about why Lincoln School was torn down, because when they came in with the bulldozer and the big ball, they couldn't knock it down. They said because of the earthquake. But a lot of us old-timers that went to school there, we figured that it was for the same reason that's going on now with the Summer Elementary School in Santa Barbara at the present day. History repeats itself. It was white flight. It was easier to bus minority kids than to bring other students into Lincoln School. Lincoln School was the first school that I went to that was integrated. I came here from Oklahoma when I went to an all-black school. And you know, it was so nice to go to a school that you had every race in Santa Barbara going to school at one place. And even today, Angie's husband was the first person I met when I walked on the school grounds, September 1944. And we're still friends today. And a lot of us get together every year to revisit that memory and dance and have dinner together. I did talk to, she's going to speak for herself, but I did talk to 2 other people that went to Lincoln School in 1928. One is a minister by the name of Jerome Smith. You might know him. He's a blues singer now, but he used to be the minister of St. Paul AME Church down on the corner of Haley and Olive Street. And most of you that have gone to school here remember Mr. Neil Wright, who was a teacher at Santa Barbara Junior High School. His mother graduated from there, from Lincoln School. So, and there's another lady that's 94 that's very ill at the present time, Mrs. Briley, that went to school at Lincoln School. So there's some of the old timers are still around. I'm sorry? Mr. Ruiz. But it just shows you that Lincoln School developed some strong characters and people. And it's kind of hard to knock us down. We can still standing and we're still doing our thing. The young lady to my left right here, they show you how interested she is in the school, and she can tell her own story. She traveled all the way from Lompoc to be here tonight.
I've been here all day.
Well, all day. At her age, that is something. I'm going to turn it over now to Mrs. McCurry.
I don't know what I was supposed to say. I didn't know I was supposed to talk. I'm kind of, the reason I'm hot is from the sun. I was all the way coming down. The sun was beating on me, and I was out. Anyway, I loved Lincoln School. Of the 3 schools, Lincoln School was my favorite because I can remember everything I did at school when I growing up, you know, all the things. It was fun. We used to march in from the outside with the drum and bugle corps. We'd run there to school, and then when the bell rang, you had to be in line. We all got in the big lines to march into our classes. And then we had these plays, and I was a movie star in Lincoln School. They gave me the star roles in all the plays, you know. And one time it was Princess Health. We go to the auditorium, everybody starts clapping. I said, what are they clapping for? Princess Health? And then there was Jimmy Germs, was the next, you know. And I got along great with the teachers. Mr. Lincoln.
You got along good with him.
Mr. Silva, J.D. Frey Silva, I was in the orchestra. He used to come to our house. My brother played the trombone, my other brother played the trumpet, and I played the violin. And we see him coming. We had 4 houses in a row, so when you see him come, we were all ran and hid. We didn't want to play. And he came in, and we'd play in the front room, you know. He played the lead roles. I played the tum-tum, tum-tum. So anyway, when I graduated from Lincoln School, I didn't know they were going to give any awards out by the American Legion. And I was sitting there, they said, we got an award to present to a girl and a boy. So when they said my name, I said, oh my golly, not me. I said, them kids are smarter than me. They were sitting around me. So I had to go up, and my mother kept these all the years for me after I graduated from high school. I went to Maryland Navy Yard. And all those years after I came back, I was married and had a couple of kids. She had kept them all in the box for me, all my trophies and these special ones. Of course, one of them, I have a diploma from Lincoln School. Nobody else had one in that whole group. They said, that is not a diploma. I said, it is too. I open it up. What does it say there?
Diploma. This is to certify that Angelina
Giovanacci.
has completed has completed the high six, Lincoln School, Santa Barbara, 1/19/1934.
See, it's a diploma. And not one person has a diploma. I can't believe it. I said, anyway. And then in the American Legion, I'm proud of this one. They presented me this big brass medal.
Here, we'll put it on the overhead there.
And I met the boy that got it a couple years ago at a high school a reunion. And he said, I want you to meet somebody. She introduced me. When he turned, I started laughing. She said, what's the matter? I said, I grew up with him, and he lived on Olive Street, and I lived on Haley. I said, I grew up, and he got the other. He said, do you still have your medal? I said, yes. Even my little one. He said, I didn't get a little one. I said, I was smarter. So that one went with
Is
that.
this American Legion as well? Is
American Legion.
American Legion?
Yeah. Which I'm nervous. And this is my book where they all signed. You know, Over the Waves, and When You Have Twins, come up and see me sometime. And, of course, all my teachers signed this book. They signed nice poetry in here. So that's what I have that I've kept all these years. And I played softball here in Santa Barbara. Do you ever remember the 7-Ups? There was a 7-Up softball team. Anybody remember them? I played with them out of high school for about 5 years, and then I went up, and then I came back. I played into the 60s with my daughters, still at Pershing Park. I played, had a good time. So that's all I can say, that I love Lincoln School.
Well, Angie Giovanacci Campitelli.
He announced football games at Santa Barbara High School for a long time. At City College also. Bishop Diego.
Yes.
That's it.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Bill, would you please tell us about the tiles that are on Coda Street?
That's Angie's task.
Oh, is that Angie's task?
I'm going to have the pleasure
The other
of telling
Angie.
you.
Good.
My name's Angie Shaw, and 4 years ago, we decided we're going to do something about letting people know where Lincoln School stood. I have a deli on Laguna Street, and every time I would pass by there, I would tell my kids or my grandkids, that's where I went to school. And they'd turn and look, where? You know, parking lot? So I got together with Bill 4 years ago, and we decided that we were going to do something about the fact that nothing was there indicating the school existed. So we started a fundraiser. We had a dinner dance the last 4 years. To earn enough money to be able to do what we did. At first we thought of doing a plaque, and then we decided no, that something colorful, tiles, the pictures of the school would be more appropriate, and that's what we did. So this is a result of it. If anybody gets a chance, it's on a wall right where the bus stop is, and there's 3 arches, which is very convenient for us that the city did that, because they fit perfect in there. There's 3 arches, and on the 3 arches we have the original Lincoln School. In the middle is the history of the school, and then on the left or the right is the Lincoln School that we went to. We had a dedication on the 28th of July, and we had the dedication there Annette, thank you so much for being there. And then we had a little
It's my
celebration.
pleasure.
We had a little celebration across the park to celebrate and to be able to reminisce over Lincoln School. And every year we have a big turnout. I have people coming in from as far as New York. They come in from San Francisco, Colorado, and it's become quite a celebration. So if anybody gets a chance, please stop by and take a look at it. It's really beautiful.
Excellent. It is beautiful. It's quite beautiful.
Oh, before I forget, I really have to thank the city of Santa Barbara because they went to bat for us. They were very cooperative. Ronnie Nallen was wonderful. He really did a lot for us, and I really have to thank the city of Santa Barbara and also anybody who helped us because it was a big project, but we got it done.
Thank you so much. I actually missed the celebration on the 28th, and so I swung by after I came back from being out of town. And I guess all I can say is that the spirit of Lincoln School lives on. It can't be disintegrated by a wrecking ball or anything else. And thank you all so much for your persistence. It's really a wonderful remembrance of Lincoln School.
Thank you very much. I have a package of Lincoln School material I want to give to each one of the board members and to the superintendent. And we are not finished with that particular area yet.
Okay.
We're going before the science committee to get that park changed from what it is now to Lincoln School parking lot.
Wow. Okay.
And we have the original boulder that says Lincoln School on it. You know, you come in from Santa Barbara Street, the corner, it's going to be to the left of that archway, and we're going to cement it in. And that was put when the school was built back in 1870.
And then you see that the plaque is over here in the corner.
Yeah.
If someone shuts the door right there, they can, yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much. Excellent.
Thanks, Mr. Sim.
Well, I just wanted to echo again how beautiful the three tile pieces are, and if you haven't seen them, if you haven't had a chance to see them, you should swing by that bus stop because they really are beautiful. And I was very honored to have been invited to participate in the unveiling because my father had attended Lincoln School, Lincoln Elementary School, and it was a great way to remember him as well. So thank you very much for inviting me.
This is certainly a great reminder to the community of the rich history of our schools in this community. Shall I continue?
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah, thank you, Annette.
I'm also happy to report Eling's Aquatic Center at Dos Pueblos High School is finished. On July 20, a large contingent of community members and school personnel came together to commemorate the event with ribbon cutting. Major donor Virgil Elings was the first one in the new Olympic-sized swimming pool, a fitting touch for a memorable day. We have another ribbon cutting scheduled for August 20 at 11 o'clock at San Marcos High School. It's for the gymnasium, and I will see board members there on the 20th at 11. And on the subject of special events, on Friday, August 24, there will be a bread-breaking ceremony to kick off the grand opening of the Harding Elementary School's new cafeteria. Well, tonight I'd like to introduce someone to you. The selection process for our new Director of Fiscal Services is complete, and Shirley Corpus is the district's new director. Shirley, would you please stand up?
All right, Shirley.
Shirley was our accounting coordinator for more than 2 years until late July when she was selected to serve as the interim director of fiscal services. We moved quickly on this appointment after going through an application process. Shirley has extensive experience in financial reporting and budgeting. She is trusted for reliable and accurate accounting and her ability to work collaboratively as part of a team. She is ready to take on the responsibility for the budget and fiscal management and is committed to fiscal transparency and accountability. Before joining the districts, Shirley worked as the business manager in the Pasadena Unified School District, a fiscal services manager in the Los Angeles Unified School District, local district F, you know, they just give them letters down there, where she oversaw all aspects of a $350 million budget. Accounting analyst at the Los Angeles Unified School District General Accounting Branch, and 19 years of experience at First Interstate Bancorp, where she was eventually a vice president. Shirley received a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of San Agustin. She is a certified public accountant. She attended Pacific Coast Banking School in Seattle and University of California's Rossier School of Education, where she was in the School Business Management program. She recently completed the Chief Business Official Mentor program sponsored by FCMAT, California Association of School Boards Officials, and School Services of California. We welcome you to this position, Shirley. As of August 3rd, all employees who received reduction in force notices except one have been rehired either as regular teachers or in temp RIF designated positions. This means that they are not rescinded due to full-time employees, but are teaching this year, and we expect enough attrition this next year so that they do move back into permanent full-time positions. The district has only one teacher who has not been rescinded, but there's a possibility, and we're trying to see what we can work out at this point. In the June 15th issue of Food Service Director, you'll want to see this, a trade publication, included an article on our Nutrition Services third annual product taste test for students. As you recall, about 300 third through sixth grade students from the district's after-school program participated. Nutrition Services Director Frank Lynn also arranged for Santa Barbara County Department of Environmental Health and other organizations to present displays that help students learn about proper hand washing and nutrition. The article was illustrated with one of Barbara Chiani's photos. And we're at that point in the year where secondary summer school has just ended, with the exception of a secondary summer session at Santa Barbara Junior High, which ends this Friday. Summer school in our secondary districts is now over, and the summer school enrollment numbers are coming in. We'll make sure that the board gets those numbers in the future board brief. Well, we're busy at this time of the year with staff trainings. The elementary and secondary secretaries met last week. This week we have a two-day management training where we will focus on excellence for all, focus on, I don't know what that focus is, and data. That's how you spell data. And professional learning communities. Next week, new teachers will participate in an orientation meeting, and certificated staff will spend 3 days in professional development. This is next week in preparation for the opening of school the following Monday. The training for our teachers will focus on professional learning communities and strategies for academic achievement. And on Tuesday, the first day of the training, all 4th through 6th grade teachers will receive an overview of the AVID elementary program and student agendas for each of the students. You may want to see this. Each of our students in grades 4 through 6 will have one of these school calendars. And this is based on the district calendar. Well, we're revving up because school is just around the corner. Our 2 year-round schools, Cleveland and Santa Barbara Community Academy, are now in session, and the balance of our district's 19 elementary, junior high, and high schools will start Monday, August 20th. And the recipients were the Santa Barbara Community Academy students in grades 3 through 6, and a second school that will be identified on Friday, as it will be a surprise to the students, so we're not going to let on just yet. Now, this backpack academic performance index and our adequate yearly progress are expected to be released to the public on August 31st. So that's an event that's coming up that we're looking forward to. And the last thing I want to report on this evening is something coming up on tonight's agenda. I've been hearing from a number of people that the district had an extra $5 million. Well, that report is the first item on the conference agenda, and we'll be taking it up at 8 o'clock today. So I hope that if members of the public are here for that, that you stay for that. If you're watching on television, I hope that you continue to watch. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sarvis. We have a very, very long consent agenda. I think probably the longest I've ever seen.
We are public comments?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Yes, public comment. I think we have 7, 8, okay. Ms. Malakoff will call your name, 3 minutes a person. You'll get a 30-second warning, and let's get started.
Jamie Hager, followed by John Hager, followed by Jeff Peterson.
Hi, I'm Jamie Hager. I'm going to be a senior at Santa Barbara High School this year. I've attended Santa Barbara schools since kindergarten through this year, and I'm here to seek reconsideration of the cancellation of the German program at Santa Barbara High School, which occurred without warning, and I'm also here to respond to the reasons why it was canceled. I have 3 copies of an email from Mr. Turnbull with the reasons as to why it was canceled. May I submit them to the board? Sure, absolutely. Right. The Foreign Language Department gave a survey to show which courses were viable for the coming years. A few of Santa Barbara High School's administrators have said that German did not fare well in the survey. I believe that the survey was invalid. About 10 teachers gave the survey. Students were told that they could leave class once all of the students had completed the survey. It was given orally, and the students were told that they could only vote once. German was one of the last languages listed on the survey after the majority of the students had used up their only vote. Many students did not get to vote for the languages they wanted because they did not hear all of the choices before they were able to vote. Ex-Assistant Superintendent Jan Zettel said in an article for sbnewsroom.com, students, not teachers or administrators, should decide which languages are taught and which ones are dropped. 35 students, he also said, signed up for Mandarin and only 15 wanted German. If this is based on the number of students who signed up for the class of fall of 2007, this statement is faulty. Students were not allowed to sign up for German for this coming fall. German has been attacked for having low enrollment, which at the end of the school year, it did have fewer students in it than in most classes. Though class enrollment should be based on the number of students enrolled at the beginning of the course, which was 25 this year. Popularity should not be a major consideration in an academic course. While languages are electives, they are effectively necessary for college admission, unlike many others such as theater arts, video production, and music. The school has an absolute responsibility to provide the education necessary to prepare those students who want to go to college to be able to do so.
30 seconds.
At UCSB and at Dos Pueblos, the schools let the students already enrolled in a course finish the course before stopping the program. 2 of our students have transferred from Santa Barbara High School, 1 to San Marcos and 1 to Bishop Diego, because they're no longer able to continue the German program. If less than 1/10 of 1% of the $5 million in the budget is spent, students like myself can finish our 3rd semester of German. If we can have that, then we can later discuss the further continuation of the German program. Even if the funds turn out to be less or the cost higher, the investment of our education and the investment in education of our college-bound students deserves this much.
Thank you. Thank you. You're about done? You were done?
I had like 2 more lines, but.
Thank you. John Hager, followed by Jeff Peterson, followed by Frank Anderson.
every one of you devotes a great deal of your time and has for many years to the education of our children. And you're the experts, you're the leaders, you've done what you do because you want to help the education of our children. And if you look at this German program, which is canceled when students are only partway through, that's the important thing, is that students who are in the program are losing the additional time that they would want to have for their college credit. If there is a way that the group of you can come up with to continue the program so that they can meet their college requirements and finish the program that they've started, you will all be able to look back on that decision with pride and be able to be happy that you were able to do that. So that's what I, on behalf of the parents of the students, request. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Peterson, followed by Frank Anderson, followed by David Holmes.
I'm Jeff Peterson, the music teacher at Goleta Valley Junior High School, and I'm here to give my perspective to how this current budget situation has adversely affected the district performing arts department. The simple matter is that performing arts offerings are the lowest in the 8 years I've been in the district. Our troubles began 4 years ago when the district reduced total class periods from 7 to 6 in the junior highs. Our department made a long presentation at a board meeting at that time that outlined exactly what that effect was. This year, adding a health requirement in an elective wheel for 7th graders has effectively deprived 7th graders of a bona fide elective. They are no longer able to make foreign language or a full-year performing arts class unless they are one of a minority of students who is able to take 7th period PE or a 0-period class. In addition, cutting back the 3 teacher positions allocated to the junior high to support the electives and strictly enforcing the 33-to-1 class sizes for struggling performing arts classes has created a near crisis for junior high performing arts. For example, La Colina is the only junior high that is offering chorus this year. Goleta Valley Junior High School has the only full orchestra class at the junior high level. Some junior highs do not have a dedicated 5-day-a-week beginning band class or any jazz ensemble. Theater arts classes have been cut at some junior highs. The elementary instrumental music program has been seriously undermined by cuts. While the board waits to find out how much money is available to rescind some of the cuts that were made for this upcoming school year, I'd like you to be cognizant of a hard reality in the public school performing arts world. Once a class is cut or a program is compromised, bringing it back to fruition can take many years. Student musicians and performers just do not appear out of nowhere. They must be recruited, trained, and nurtured, a process that takes time. I urge you to do all that is in your power to give the performing arts an opportunity to regain its footing by returning everything to what it was in September 2006. Place all performing arts teachers back to the schools they were at with the classes they were teaching at 1 year ago. Return the extra 3 FTEs to the junior high schools. Allow performing arts classes under 33 enrollment to go forward and reinstate the elementary instrumental music program to where it was 1 year ago. If, in fact, the district made cuts to student programs due to erroneous budget information, then the school board, in my opinion, has an obligation to make it right for the students and families of this district. The longer the board waits, the more damage that is being done. Thank you.
Frank Anderson, followed by Dave Holmes, followed by Monica Peterson.
Hello, my name is Frank Anderson. I'm here representing parents who have formed together to create an arts advocacy committee for the Santa Barbara City Schools. On July 4th of this year, I attended the symphony concert at the Sunken Gardens. There was only one those arts programs. That speech left me feeling very bitter based on what I knew had happened with the budget cuts last year. That's nothing compared to the feeling I got when I read the article on the 23rd talking of the $5 million shortfall, or the $5 million windfall that was based on faulty budgeting. $5 million. That's a lot of kids whose participation in the arts were very severely harmed. Those arts programs are not available this year. The schedules have already been set. It's very difficult to turn that back. we need to change the way we do things. I would ask you right now to restore what we can. That includes the third elementary instrumental music program teacher that was cut, restoring that program immediately this year to the status it was prior to the budget cuts. I would also like to see you reinstate the 7 periods in the junior high school curriculum. Reinstating 7 periods gives the children the opportunity to have those electives that they need in order to pursue the arts or language. Without those 7 periods, there is no opportunity. So use that $5 million windfall and please restore those programs. Thank you.
Thank you. David Holmes, followed by Monica Peterson, followed by Karen Dutton.
I hope you noticed that the Lincoln alumni remembered very fondly drama and music in their experience in elementary school. In April of this year, board members voted to cut elementary music by 2/3. It was originally slated to be cut entirely, but through an act of what must have been compassion, you voted not to cut the program entirely. You voted to cut it by 2/3. What this proved to me is that collectively you misunderstood the needs of the program. And what is wrong when decisions are made by looking at numbers rather than looking at the needs of that program? A paradigm shift must occur in order for future decisions to show true compassion and understanding of program needs. A program is not made by assigning a random teacher into a random program where tab A fits into slot B. It may appear that way on paper, and perhaps your Excel spreadsheet supports that decision, but in reality, your decision is bad for kids and destructive to the program. There can be little argument that the strength of a program is not found in a name, nor is it found in the location for that program. The strength of any program is found in the teachers. If you hire a teacher who shares your vision for a program, that program has a better chance of succeeding than it would if the teacher was involuntarily transferred into that program. Doesn't that make sense? It seems like a no-brainer, yet your staff has made just such personnel decisions that flies in the face of logic and common sense. These decisions are made because of a system that seems to totally disregard the goals and fundamentals of ensuring that a program stays healthy. In the elementary music cuts of last April, you asked one teacher to maintain an instrumental music program at all 9 elementary schools. Does that make any sense at all? Chances are better for all elementary schools to have a strong music program when the district's vision for our kids includes music as a must-have and not as an expendable frill. Directives to your staff and to the principals to hire credentialed teachers in music at all schools would be an undeniable commitment to the art of teaching music and an investment in the future of our children. This vision for the arts in the elementary schools must have an inclusion of a comprehensive K-6 program of creative dramatics and vocal music. This program starts when the right teachers are hired who share the vision and are unafraid of the hard work that it takes to be successful.
30 seconds.
I call on the board to adopt a vision for the performing arts in the secondary district as well. This vision must include a commitment to hiring credentialed teachers in vocal music, instrumental music, drama, and maybe even someday a return of dance in every secondary school. We have suffered tremendous losses to the programs at our junior highs over the past few years. I ask the board to commit resources to each performing arts discipline, to direct your staff and the principals to hire credentialed teachers in drama, vocal music, instrumental music, and dance at all secondary schools. To do so supports the vision that the performing arts in the Santa Barbara school districts is part of an indispensable core.
Thank you.
I ask the board to act now. Do not wait any longer to restore the arts in all of our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Monica Peterson, followed by Karen Dutton, followed by Pauline Kelly.
School board members, I am Monica Peterson. I'm here tonight to ask that you restore junior high electives to last year's levels. I also ask that elementary school teachers elementary school music teachers be hired at an equivalent level as last year. Reducing electives was a bad idea because the students are not allowed any flexibility to choose elective classes during the regular school day. They cannot choose which class would benefit them personally. This lack of choice is very disappointing to students. The electives program is an obvious way to keep kids interested in something that happens at school. This comes at a time when our community is struggling to keep our children interested in wholesome activities and out of gangs. Reducing electives means that foreign language students suffer. Studying foreign language for 1 year in junior high does not prepare students for high school foreign language classes. They must take foreign language in both 7th and 8th grade in order to advance to the next level in high school. Reducing electives means that some junior high students, in desperation, have chosen to take an elective class before school, and herein lies a serious problem because there are no buses to transport the students to school. Only students that have their own transportation can get to school as early as 7:30 a.m. Therefore, a large percentage of the students do not have access to these early classes. Reducing junior high electives means that valuable high school classes like band and theater are becoming very small. In terms of number of students, elective class teachers have described their situation as, I quote, desperate. It is imperative that the electives program be restored immediately before the school year begins. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Karen Dutton, followed by Pauline Kelly.
Hello, my name is Karen Dutton. I'm speaking this evening as a parent of two musicians and also as a teacher in the performing arts here in Santa Barbara School Districts. And I too, as Mr. Holmes stated, found it very poignant that one of our graduates of Lincoln School, one of the things she remembered the most and most fondly was being in the orchestra and the drum and bugle corps in the morning. And those things stick in kids' minds, and we're unfortunately losing a lot of that in our schools. When the dust settles, and if this $5 million windfall or $2 million windfall or any kind of windfall comes to fruition, I would hope in your minds that you would find it in your hearts to restore the programs at the elementary, the electives at the junior highs that were so painful for you to cut in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, Pauline Kelly.
Good evening. I'm Pauline Kelly. I want to start by saying one of my favorite bumper stickers is Art Saves Lives. And at first you puzzle over that and you go, how can art save lives? Medicine saves lives, you know, science saves lives. But when you really think about it, art does save lives. When my husband grew up in an underserved community in a whatever city in the United States, what saved his life was an art class in junior high where the art teacher opened it up before hours. If you got there early, you could go in and you could hang out and plunk around and play with the materials, and it got him interested in art. Years later, he got his master's degree in painting. But more importantly, what he didn't get was a prison sentence because many of his friends in his underserved community ended up in prison. Many of his friends ended up dead. Very few of them ended up in college. Very few of them ended up with a successful life. Art saves lives. And even if you have a kid who takes all AP academics, which mine do, they take art too, because that's what's going to save their life. That's what's going to make their life rich. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our public comment. Thank you to all of you for coming this evening to share your statements.
Before we move on, I think I need to correct an apparent misperception. We currently have 2 instrumental music teachers at the elementary level, not 1.
Thanks, Dr. Sarvis. Now we're on to our consent agenda. As I indicated before, I think record-long consent agenda, 33 items. Are there any items that board members wish to pull for discussion?
Ms. Harder, before we start pulling items, we're taking D5 off the agenda. We will rework it and bring it back to a future agenda. And board members have a revised D7 in front of the, or I'm sorry, D17.
Right.
Recommended personnel actions.
Okay.
There was one cross out on that list.
Okay.
I'd like to pull D28.
D11, D17 and 18, D23, D24.
I'd like to pull D4. You pulled D23. Has D22 been pulled?
No.
Oh.
Will we have a consent agenda left? Yeah, go ahead. D22, I've got it.
D22.
Okay, so if someone would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of D4, D5 has been pulled, D11, D16, D17, D18.
And
D16
pulled? D28.
D22, 23, and 24.
You got 21?
No, would you like to pull 21?
Yes.
And 28.
And 28.
I move that we approve the remaining few.
Second.
Thank you. So motion by Ms. Malakoff, a second by Ms. Cordero. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Should be pointed out that there were 33 items on that. Proportion-wise, that's not so bad.
Okay. So we are on to our action agenda, and we will jump to our conference agenda on item F1 at 5 minutes after 8. So we'll go as long as we can. Item E1 is approval of San Marcos High School and Turnpike Shopping Center evacuation site agreement.
And Mr. Gonzalez, our Director of Compliance and Categorical Programs, will make this presentation. It's a fairly brief presentation.
Good evening. For probably 2 years now, the staff of San Marcos High School have been working with the owners and occupants of the Turnpike Shopping Center to make sure that that site is available as an alternate evacuation site if needed. What you have before you, and a memorandum of understanding between the district and the shopping center has been reviewed by council and is presented for you tonight. There was a question when Mr. Diaz returns. At the time that we drafted this, we did not know what additional costs this represented to the district. Mr. Diaz was in communication with our insurance carrier, and when he returns, he should be able to give us a figure for that. Also, Roxana Stern, the assistant principal at San Marcos High School, who worked to make this happen, is available if you have any questions.
Mr. Gonzalez, I suppose the most obvious question is, why does San Marcos need this agreement and other schools may or may not?
Please. It was, the upper fields is the usual evacuation site for San Marcos High School. They took the initiative 2 years ago to make sure that another site is available to them. Turnpike Shopping Center said, you know what, we will welcome you folks. However, we want to make sure that we are protected in case the facility is used, and thus resulted in this memorandum of understanding. And I'll turn the microphone over to Ms. Stern to add any additional information.
As you may know, our site is located next to two very busy streets, and also a railroad track runs directly behind the school. When we have talked about disaster planning, we have, as a staff, often expressed concern that there could be some kind of an accident on the railroad track that would then render the upper field, our typical evacuation site, unusable, dangerous for our students and for our staff. We began looking around the immediate vicinity, and we saw the shopping center with its access to the busier streets would be an appropriate place where parents could come pick up their students if they needed to. If we needed to use buses to get the students out, Hollister Avenue and Turnpike Road are appropriate access roads for that. And that's why we asked the shopping center if they would support us.
Thank you, Ms. Stern. Any other questions by board members? I think we wanted the insurance figure,
Mr.
yes?
Diaz, you do not have the insurance figure yet, right?
No, I do not have the specific cost associated with that coverage, but I can get that for you.
Do we want to wait on that?
Well, in the event that it's very much money at all, we may want to reconsider this, so I think we should.
Wait.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's postpone
I
this
saw
item.
some looks from my fellow board members like, do we really want to approve this without a cost connected to it? Yeah, Mr. Diaz?
Yeah, one further note, follow-up to that. Item D21 is our memorandum of coverage for the upcoming 07-08 year. And if that is not in place, we won't have insurance anywhere.
Well, I'm sure we'll deal with that at the end of the meeting. Thank you for the work on it. I mean, I think the work is complete. I think the reasoning is sound. I think that the board would, it's really to wait and see what the figure is connected to it, although I don't see any huge issues. Thank you for taking the time, Ms. Stern. Thanks, Mr. Gonzalez. So we'll bring this one back when we've got an amount connected to it. Okay.
Could probably be put on the consent agenda, is that?
It could easily be put on the
It could
consent
be.
agenda, yes? Okay.
Yeah, and I have to, when you mentioned D21, I looked back and I didn't mean to say to pull D21, so.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, then we can go back and make a separate motion. Thanks, Dr. Noel. Item E2, second reading and approval of revisions to Board Policy 4350 regarding changes to the number of vacation days for confidential employees.
The board has had discussion of this item before. Dr. Robertson, our Director of Personnel, will comment.
The first reading of the revisions needed in Board Policy 4350 was conducted at the July 10th, 2007 board meeting. At the first reading, the confidential vacation language under BP 4350 was revised to reflect the approved negotiated agreement with management confidential staff. At that time, I was not directed to make any changes to the language that was submitted to you. Therefore, I'm recommending that the board approve the final language revisions in Board Policy 4350.
Thanks, Dr. Robertson. Questions? Nope, we've seen it before. Is anyone ready with a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you. So a motion by Ms. Cordero, second by Ms. Malakoff. All those in favor of approving the revisions to Board Policy 4350 regarding changes to the number of vacation days for confidential employees signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It passes 5-0. Item E3, second reading and approval of revisions to Board Policy 4333.1 regarding the management mileage allowance.
The board has considered this before as well. Dr. Robertson will comment, and I noticed that the recommendation should have the word approve inserted, that the Board of Education approve the final language revisions of the policy.
Okay.
Thank you.
I lost that one, but all right. After a brief discussion at the July 10th board meeting, there was a request that I change in this board policy, La High School from Zone 4 to Zone 6. I did make those changes, and it is in the packet that you've been given, and for second reading, so I need you to take a look at that and note that La has been changed to Zone 6. With this change, then I am recommending that the board approve the final language revisions in BP 4333 to reflect the negotiated changes to the management confidential negotiations.
Thanks, Dr. Robertson. Questions or comments by board members? Motion?
Move to approve.
So a motion by Ms. Cordero, second by Ms. Malakoff, to approve the revisions to Board Policy 4333.1 regarding the management mileage allowance. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item E4, which we can squeeze in, I'm sure. The board action on student expulsion case numbers 0607-22, 85, 89, and 91.
In case number 0607-91, move to approve the stipulated agreement.
Second.
So motion by Ms. Cordero, second by Ms. Malakoff. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
In case 0607-22, move to approve the stipulated agreement.
Second.
So motion by Cordero, second by Malakoff. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so that passes 5-0.
In case 0607-89, move to approve the findings and recommendations of the hearing panel.
Second.
Thank you. That was Cordero and Malakoff. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
And in 0607-85, move to approve the findings and recommendations of the hearing panel.
Second.
Thank you, Cordero and Malakoff. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So it passes 5-0. Thank you very much. And now we are moving on to, from our action agenda to our conference agenda, to item F1, update on analysis of the 06-07 estimated actuals, 07-08 budget, and 3-year projections.
And it
Madam
is.
President, since
Yes,
we're,
sir.
we're about 5 minutes early on that, and I know some people asked me when it was going to start, and I told them 8:05.
Okay.
Can we somehow delay that for 5 minutes?
Here's what I would ask. I agree with delaying discussion of the item, but if there's a handout and Mr. Diaz is able to lead you through that handout, you may want to take the time to read through that handout. I don't know.
Does the audience have that handout
It should be available in the
Yes.
back of the room.
on the table there?
Yes.
Well-
In the accordion file, it would be under F1. Okay, thank you, Mr. Wheeler.
Well, let me just suggest that our time may be well spent looking at that handout anyway.
Yeah, I do too. Actually, I'm going to suggest a 5-minute break until 8:05, and we can use the time to review the document. So 5-minute break, and then we'll start the item on time at 8:05. Dr. Sarvis, did you want to make any comments before Mr. Diaz gets started?
No, I'm anxious to let Ed Diaz, our Assistant Superintendent for Business Services, give the report.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Sarvis, Board. We appreciate the opportunity this evening to come before the Board and the public to clarify some of the questions that were raised regarding our larger than anticipated ending balance that presented on June 29. But to cut right to the chase and summarize, I'll let you know there is no windfall. And I'm going to walk you through all of those numbers so that you have a clear understanding of where that money is, what it's going to be used for, and how it will be spent. But just to begin with, number 2, the overview. Tonight's presentation, I want you to know, is not normally part of our reporting cycle. We're doing this evening strictly as a response to the large interest that was expressed in the community, and we felt it important in our continuation to strive for transparency that we give you the best information we have tonight. And what we're going to show you tonight is a work in process that includes the closing process, data that incorporates staff accounting adjustments, the information from the Santa Barbara County Education Office review, and an independent review by the Management Consulting Division of Vavrinick, Tyne, and Day, the district's auditors. So there's 3 different levels of review that have taken place with this information, and I believe the results are sound. Third page. Let's start by walking through the windfall. There's the windfall. 5,684,000 thereabouts, the extra 5 million. That is larger than usual, larger than anticipated ending balance in this district that has been struggling for some years. And we went back through and reviewed all the information, and it got even a little bit larger by $484,000. But upon reviewing further, we saw that it had also decreased by $2,155,000. And the reason that it was decreased is we understated some revenue. We understated some expenditures that should have been included in this number to begin with. And essentially what most of that money was $1,000,003 in our salary settlement that we had for 06-07 that was paid in 07-08, but it should have been expensed in 06-07, and it wasn't. So there was a large increase in the ending balance because those expenses weren't included there. So that brings us to an undesignated amount.
I'm having trouble seeing a 1,000,003 entry there.
It's in this number here, Dr. Noel, and if we'll change, Dave, would you switch to page 3 slightly before then? Dr. Noel, that 494,000, if you'll flip back, Dave, to the prior page. This increase in fund balance is delineated further on the, and I'm sorry to be using overheads tonight. I couldn't get this stuff all to go into PowerPoint the right way, and it was more important to get it right than to get it pretty. So part of that 1.3, Dr. Noel, is right there. Those are the salaries that I just referred to, and those make up part of the increase in the fund balance. These were the revenues that had been understated. Frankly, we had revenues of $2,286,000 that were understated in different areas, property taxes, hourly programs, class size reduction. Shirley can speak in greater detail on those individual items, but suffice to say we had revenues that were understated by 2.2, and we had expenditures that were understated by 1.8, giving us a net increase of 484,941. Dave, would you go back to that other slide? That's that 484,941, which includes, Dr. Noel, that 1.3 as shown on the other slide. The given that the expenditures were higher, it also increased our reserve for economic uncertainties. We have to maintain 3% reserve on all of the expenditures. But that leads us to 07-08, a designated amount of 4,227. Keep in mind that in 07-08, that's the year that the board, that's the budget year that we asked the board to make those reductions, because it's not only important to realize the finances for 06-07, but my charge as the Chief Financial Officer and Shirley's as the Director of Fiscal Services is we have to maintain appropriate reserve balances out for 3 years. We have to be able to prove to the state of California that not only can we meet our obligations for 06-07, we have to show that we can meet them for the next 3 years as well. It would be a imprudent practice, I think, anybody would realize that if we spent the money that we need this year that we show we have as a reserve, if we spent that on at whatever the board would decide. I don't decide on what money's spent on. My charge is to provide accurate and timely financial information. Then what you're going to be back to making cuts next year or the year after. The reason that we have a larger reserve this year is so that we can make it through the next 2 years, as you will see this evening as I continue. So continuing on for 07-08, we have went through on 07-08 with more of a fine-tuning with the reduction in ADA. The district is still in a declining enrollment. I don't think that the numbers, well, I don't think, the numbers that were presented on June 29th did not have adequate addressing of the declining enrollment and its impact on the revenue limit for the district. So we went in and we made some adjustments. These, again, were made by, principally these adjustments here were made by our independent reviewer, our auditor, or management consultant from our audit firm. And there are many, many support sheets that back all these numbers up, and I have those in my office should anybody want to see them. But that takes us through 07, 08 down into 08, 09, where we still show we're in pretty...
Mr. Diaz, can we go back to 07, 08?
Yes, sir.
What precisely does $4,227,724 stand for?
That represents the undesignated amount of your... Dave, flip to the last slide. Dr. Noel, that represents the undesignated amount of your 07-08 budget after your expenses, your revenue and expenditures have been accounted for, after your components of ending balance have been accounted for, after your 3% reserve for economic uncertainties, that leaves you with the balance of $4,227,000. And that's what that...
by any other name, is that not a windfall?
No, sir. It's not
That's
a windfall. It's an undesignated reserve. I want you to look, if we want to entertain such a notion, I want you simply to look to the right, to the next two columns, and see what happens to that windfall, if you want to characterize it as such. In 08, 09, we've added... again, a reduction of ADA, and I've kind of got off from the other sheet, but this actually shows it better for the projections, for the multi-year. We've added the continuing decline in enrollment, reduced our expenses, went up somewhat. Again, you know, you're projecting 2 years out, so it's hard to get exact numbers on those things. And you still end up with a smaller reserve of $3,167,000. Now, here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. Here's where the windfall goes. And I don't even like using that term because it's not a fair characterization of a larger than normal ending balance. So, but that seems to be...
I understand that the windfall is dissipated in the subsequent years, but
it's not.
The number 4,227,000 is still there in that column.
Okay. Nevertheless, Dr. Noel, in 08, 09, the windfall gets a little small. I'm going to use the word windfall. Everybody seems to like it. So, in fact, I'm starting to like it more myself. It's easier to say than a larger than anticipated ending balance. That's so accountant. That is so very accountant. So let's just call it the windfall. Okay. So the windfall goes from $4,227,000. In 08, 09, it ends up at $3,163,000. You're relatively stable for 07, 08, and 08, 09 because we have secured agreements with our bargaining units that last through those years. And so therefore our labor costs are easier to predict, and those expenses are stable in those years. Now, when you get to 09, 10...
Well, wait a minute. No.
Well, okay.
But to talk about this as though it's sort of a natural progression of events is to overlook the fact that there's an entry in those columns at the top for total expenditures of 80 million in the 20708, 82 million, and it seems to imply that those are written in stone and are not really something. That number doesn't reflect decisions about expenditures that have yet to be made, and indeed and are the board's province to make.
Yes, I agree with you.
So there's a number there, assumptions about expenditures that helps support the argument that the windfall is a phantom. And I would like to suggest that it's the expenditures that may contain some items that we want to re-examine, that they may be reduced and that so-called windfall will not disappear.
That could possibly be so, Dr. Noel. And that, as I mentioned, given that this is a unscheduled financial presentation, not part of our normal accounting cycle, when we come back to the board on, I believe, September 11th with the unaudited actuals, when our books are closed, when all entries have been made, it's not unlikely that some of those numbers may change. But I agree with your statement that, of course, it is always the purview of the board to change any of those expenditure numbers and add or subtract from them. That is your charge. My charge is simply to try to report to you good numbers on which to make those decisions. And I remain committed to our focus in our department is timely and accurate financial information. It's a very simple statement, but it's one that we have to live by. Now, continuing our discussion, we move into 09-10, and for 09-10, we haven't a settlement with our labor unions. So I added, at my own discretion as your chief financial officer, just to be conservative, I added to the expenses a COLA that's equal to what school services is projecting on their website. I believe it's somewhere near 3%, and a step and column increase that significantly raised our expenses. Now, I'm not negotiating in public here. I'm not saying that that's what it's going to be. I'm just saying, as a prudent accounting measure, you don't want a guy standing up here as your chief financial officer says, don't worry about 09-10. You know, something will happen. Something will take care of itself. Well, let's make sure that we plan for it now, and then if there's some few changes to that, that's fine. But when you start looking at 09-10 and you trace the impact down to the ending balance, you see that after our reserves for economic uncertainty, we're going to be $1.4 million light in 09-10. So all of this goes back along the bottom here to our descriptions of these windfall amounts, and I would suggest to you and counsel you as your chief financial officer that it would be very cautious with your decisions to spend these so-called windfall sums when you're looking at this number over here, because that will be upon us sooner than we know, and we'll be back into the cycle of cuts and program reductions, which we will not have to go through over the next 2 years. Dr. Noel is right. The board could review some of these expenditures and reallocate some of those funds. That's certainly their charge. But I think this slide here probably shows more clearly the 3-year impact of our finances. Dave, if you want to go back to the go back to the other one that we were on. And so it's important to note that this number, this million, there's the 4,227 that was in the column 40708. There's the 3,163,000 that appeared in the column of 0809, and there's the 1,433,000 that was in the column of 0910. So without trying to oversimplify the information, I think we've done an adequate job of trying to clarify the larger than expected or larger than anticipated ending balance. We knew that we were going to have to look out into the next 3 years because this district has had trouble in the past maintaining their reserve requirements. And one of the directives that I received from the superintendent and the board was to make sure we're in good shape out for the next several years. So hopefully that we are moving in that direction. I'm not saying that this alone does that, because I'm frankly concerned about those expenditure numbers on those other pages. As Dr. Nell says, they're not written in stone, and I'm hoping that they don't go up any higher than they are on those pages. One of the principal metrics for that, I've frequently discussed this with the superintendent, is we have to wait and see what our October payroll the October payroll, not the September payroll. We want to see what our October payroll looks like for that full month. That will give us a good indication of our labor expense, which in the school district is about 80%, a little over 80% of your total expenditure. So we need to see how that number comes in. If it comes in higher than we have anticipated or that we budgeted for, we're going to know. I'll be back here talking about that on December 15th when we present the first interim, and there may be some adjustments that will have to be made at that time. So this budget process for a school district, as most of you have heard me say many times, it's a fluid, it's a dynamic environment that changes all throughout the year as people are hired, stuff is purchased, stuff is not purchased, commitments are made, commitments are changed. So this kind of illustrates to us the true characterization of the windfall, and I don't want to be sarcastic and call it a windfall because it really isn't. It's just a larger, look at it this way. We're storing up nuts for the winter, as we're going to need to spend those amounts 2 years from now.
Yeah, but by virtue of the nature of the cuts that were made in April, you're storing up nuts at the expense of the performing arts and the humanities, and the I think what this group is interested in is the priorities. And when we just look at an expenditure item on a column that said 80 million bucks expenditure, there's no unpacking of that to look at the priorities that are built into that set of expenditures. And what I hear, and it's a feeling I share, needless to say, is a plea to be sensitive to a set of priorities that give the arts their due, give the performing arts their due, that reinstate elective courses, and then let's start at zero base and talk all over again.
Well, as I say, Dr. Monell, I take my direction from the superintendent and the board, and that is up to you to make those changes. So that's what your desire is.
Can I ask?
I mean to. I want to.
But I can't produce revenue out of thin air.
Somewhere in this conversation, another issue has to be raised. We got the budget on, I believe, Thursday, June 28th, maybe Wednesday. We had a budget meeting scheduled for Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock on June 29th. Friday afternoon, okay? At that meeting, and only at that meeting, were we told about this windfall. That was new information. We were not given an opportunity. We were asked to essentially approve this budget as a bundle, up or down, no unpacking, no amendments, no changes, up or down. Now, it's easy to say that it's up to the board to make these value judgments and set these priorities and change these expenditures, but it's up to staff to present the options to the board in a way that makes that meaningful, that gives us advance information that we can talk about, that tells the public what's at stake. How many people from the public were at that major decision in the year? Lane was there. Were you lonely? Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock, public participation in a major decision of a board, that's just unacceptable.
Well, I agree with you.
So to make this process work.
Yeah, we need to have. I'm not going to sit up here this evening and talk again about the complexity of our financial system, the accounting systems that we use, the multiple programs that are legacy programs, proprietary programs that cost us a fortune to operate, that we don't have staff to operate. And
well,
it is,
you make a plea for more staff.
No, I'm not making a plea. I'm just giving you. I'm telling you the reason
I was extremely upset this afternoon when at 2:30 I signed on. My last time I signed on to my email, and I get 3 Excel spreadsheets from you that are about this evening's meeting. Now, as it turns out, my afternoon was booked. I tried very hard to download them. I did
Mhm.
download them. I tried to print them. I couldn't because I don't have the format, and I
Yeah.
just couldn't take the time. So I had to come to this meeting unprepared to deal, just thoughtfully think about the new material it gave us. Again, we're getting these critically important pieces of information and venues for making decisions, all compressed with no chance for a full airing, no chance for board members to ask meaningful questions, and for you then to go and research and come back. How can all that happen between 5 o'clock Friday afternoon and the vote taken at about 6:15? The process has got to change.
Well, I agree. I agree. And the information you got today, keep in mind, is a month early from when it would normally be available. I was asked to produce this presentation of this information of work in progress that normally by Ed Code is not required to be delivered until September 15th. And it's August 14th.
Ms. Malakoff?
Yeah, I have some questions of the material at hand here. This includes the estimated, well, the actual and the estimated salary increases for
Yes,
the next
ma'am.
few years. And it also includes as well the COLAs or an estimated amount of COLAs, because we obviously don't know what that is.
Yes,
but they're,
you're referring to the salary settlements?
yes.
Yes, it does.
Or no, I meant from the state. That it
Yes.
includes
Yes,
any
ma'am.
kind of state increases that we don't know exactly what they are, but
I would like to invite Shirley up here to join me, and she can talk a little bit about that. I think it's important for her to get introduced to the public. She looks so pleased at the thought of it. But come on up, Shirley. Come on up. You can talk a
Ms. Corpus,
little
bit about those COLAs.
May I say, I'll be quiet, Ms. Corpus.
You're very kind, Dr. Noel. Give
well,
her.
I will be kind to her because she has always been kind to me and provided information and taken time to answer questions and educate me. And I truly am grateful for that and very pleased at her appointment.
Yes, and so am I, and she has my full confidence, and I believe she already has began a restructuring in that department that will make the flow of information more timely, that will give the board the time to review and have the input. I plan on bringing to our next board meeting the fundamental elements, the beginning elements of what our budget advisory committee could look like. I've been working with different chief business officials around the state on what theirs looks like, so I'll have some beginning information for you. But you know, I agree completely with all the things you say. It takes too long, it's too cumbersome, and you don't have enough time. We don't have enough time. I didn't get that spreadsheet that I sent to you until about 10 minutes before it went out to you. So yeah, it's just we don't have the time to do the job that we need to do.
and it's also a moving target, that you've got things, a lot of things in here that are estimates.
Constantly changing. They're constantly changing until we actually get the accounts of the children and the seats and the classes and the different programs. It is such a
State financing.
it's such a complex model, funding model, and then every single program has their own criteria. And until you get all of that data into our system, like you say, Ms. Malakoff, yeah, it's very hard to pin it down.
My other question before we get to Shirley is about the two different districts, and we haven't dealt with that here. And that's a whole nother issue, is between the elementary and the secondary district, is it not? And this may come out differently between the two districts. Or is this, or I guess it's a question, is it the same with the different districts, or might it be different?
You know, that is a very tough question. In an ideal world, we would have the finances to really operate two separate districts and just have one budget for the elementary and one budget for the high school district, and do some type of a manual combination to show the public of what the total would look like. The fact remains, however, that the elementary district has constantly struggled with their finances, and it's not because of poor management, it's not because of poor fiscal practices. We offer a lot of things to a lot of kids, and it costs us a lot more money. And constantly, or I wouldn't say constantly, but many times in the past, the secondary district has had to help them out with the transfers and temporary loans of that type. We don't have any of those in these figures tonight. I'm not ruling it out. If some of those expenditure items get moved around and changed, it could happen. As you mentioned, it's a fluid environment to this financial budgeting. So what you see tonight shows both districts with their own 3% reserve, but I'm hoping it stays that way.
Yeah, Ms. Cordero? Ms. Parker?
I'm ready to start with some questions. First of all, fundamentally, in the past, this district has used some sort of like baseline budgeting process, is that correct? Where you just roll over?
A rollover budgeting
rollover
would be.
budgeting. But have you completely switched to a zero-based budgeting
Not
practice,
completely,
or you're
Ms.
using sort of
Parker.
a hybrid?
The zero-based budgeting is, just for everybody's understanding, zero-based budgeting is if you start out the year and you say, you know, we don't know how much this is going to be. We didn't spend much in it last year, or we spent nothing in it last year, so I'm not going to put anything in the budget for that item, and we'll see what ends up getting spent. Some things may appear, some things may get charged and end up in that item, and then you would make an adjustment at first interim to reflect that program or whatever that would be, whatever that expenditure would come up to be. That's a zero-based budget. Now that gives you the lowest possible expenditures and the highest, of course, then accordingly the highest ending balance, because you're not saying, well, you know, we spent $200,000 in this last year, let's put $200,000 in the budget for it this year. I don't think that's responsible budgeting. I think that's I don't know. That's just rollover budgeting. And sometimes, for instance, if our teachers' salaries, we can use rollover budgeting with teacher salaries because we know how many teachers we have. We've worked, the contracts have all gone through our process, and we can say, well, we can roll $60 million forward in that account category because we know that that's what it's going to be spent, plus or minus a few adjustments. But things, for instance, like we've talked a lot here about contracts. We've talked about consulting services. We've talked about different categories, generally in the 4, 5, and 6,000 objects of our account structure. Those items we don't necessarily know they're going to be the same from year to year. So it's prudent to take some of those and zero them out, and then see what contracts come in.
But it's pretty predictable if you're moving from a rollover system to a zero-based budgeting system that you're going to see sudden increases in revenue, essentially, if you want to call it revenue, or a lack of expenditure, whichever way you want to.
Yeah,
it'll depend on the category if it's revenue or expenditure, but you may see sudden
Well, revenues
jumps.
are easier to predict, Ms. Parker, because if we have the grant or we're enrolled in the program, we have a funding letter from the state, and we can book that as a receivable on our books, and that revenue will come in. Let's just take a program, for instance. The corresponding expenditures, however, we may not have known that program, we had late programs come in when we were doing the budget. There were grants coming in, and so we didn't have any expenditures set up for those because we didn't know the revenues were going to exist. So those will show themselves on our first interim report. Again, it's not like our school districts are not like a private company where you have a production cycle where you have products, you sell, have accounts receivable, you collect your money, you put it in the bank, you make more products and you send them out. This is a very, we're in the education business. This is an education enterprise, and our district receives revenue based on the number of children and services that we provide, and that covers a wide spectrum, as I don't have to tell you folks here. You are all part of that. You're all part of that process.
But when you decided to make the shift, you would have had some knowledge that there was going to be an increase, let's put it, in the amount of money that might be available because you weren't putting it
thought
automatically into expenditures.
Yes, ma'am. I was comfortable in zeroing out some of the things that I had seen no activity, and I instructed Shirley and the staff that I don't want just a rollover budget. I want you to look through every account code. I want you to go, and we did, and I want her to talk a little bit about that. How
and maybe you can talk about that. But another question I have is, in the recent past, the districts have had some difficulty in making their 3% reserve. It has not carried an undesignated amount. Is that correct, or has there been it has? How much has the undesignated amount been in the past few years, sort of roughly? Nothing. Oh, I see. So you're agreeing with me. It has not been carrying an undesignated amount. But this year, the suggestion is that we should essentially, it's for 0708, it's building a 3% for economic uncertainties plus an extra, was it like 3.26 something?
Yes, and
so it's essentially like a 6%
ending balance, an ending balance of 6%, and
but
this
a 60% reserve in order to be okay in 0910.
That's correct. And we're not completely okay in 0910. We'll be closer to being okay.
Closer to being okay in 0910.
And the board has given me direction on numerous occasions that they would like to see a higher reserve. Mm-hmm. I've heard the board members say we can't keep scrimping along on a 3% reserve.
I agree, but I think we've talked in the past about trying to build it up to 3.5% or maybe 4%. Mm-hmm. And when I look so far out, when I see that we haven't even gotten a budget from the state at this point, there are still uncertainties for 0708.
Yes,
and I know that you're basing 0910 on your best available numbers, but it is just a guess.
Certainly is.
And it could be a lot worse, and it could be a lot better than that. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up as I was looking at the numbers today at 2:30 was when I looked at your projected enrollment, you're projecting a decline of about 3% across the districts. I was looking just at the elementary district, and I took those numbers and I went back and looked at the basic aid projections of what they had projected enrollment as, which was quite a bit higher than what this budget is built on. Mm-hmm. And according to that data, if everything held true, and it very well could not, we would be basic aid in 0809 and for elementary. And that could be a big change just in 1 year. And so I hesitate. For me personally, I consider myself, I don't like these ups and downs. I would like to have a larger reserve. At the same time, I see the flip side. I know that our district goes to every site principal and says, the money that you get this year is meant for students that you're serving this year. And you're not supposed to, they don't want you to, at the site level, to roll over money because you need to serve these students. And so I would like to be able for us to find some compromise place where we can still serve student needs now and build back some of the programs that we have been cutting without taking it so far that we're putting it at such a terrible place for 0910. But I feel like 0910 is very theoretical at this point, and I'm very concerned about holding on to an over 6% reserve. So that's my take on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did have some questions. I'm sorry. I had anticipated we were going to hear some follow-up before we were asking our questions, but should I go now or?
Sure.
Okay. One of the questions I have, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I want to sort of flesh it out a little bit, and that is when we look at your chart for that goes out for up to
the last page, Dave, the last.
0910. It does look like for this year, 0708, we would have a 6.26 reserve essentially, because we'd have the 3% reserve plus the 3.26 additional undesignated amounts. I can see the difficulty in expending any of that 4.2 on ongoing costs, because that would significantly impact the projections for 08-09 and 09-10. But I'm wondering to how severely it might affect them if we were to expend any of those on one-time or short-term costs. Because I know these other numbers are based on having those in the beginning balance. So even if we were to expend them on one-time expenditures, would that have a dire effect on the projections for the next 2 years?
I don't want to use the word dire, but of course, any expenditures that you created out of these reserves here would then appear up here as an increase. And so there would be an effect on the end balance. It would go down by those amounts. Hopefully those expenditures would be contained as one-time items, whatever it is that you direct us to investigate and report on, and we could be ready to give you some information when the unaudited actuals are ready next month. But I understand completely. It is not fun being the Chief Financial Officer up here at Santa Barbara School District when I am such a supporter of art and music myself. I write music. You might find that hard to believe, but I am a musician and I'm a patron of the arts. So this is awful. This is awful to have to sit up here and listen to your pleas for additional resources. I couldn't agree with you more. On the other hand, I'm the guy that has to make sure that you're going to have a paycheck in 08-09 and in 09-10. So it's a dilemma. And there's nothing funny about it. I can't make any jokes or quips about it because it's real services to real kids, and it breaks my heart to have to go through this, but I have no choice. I have no choice. On the other hand, the board has the authority, and it's within their purview to reallocate expenditures and implement programs or take away programs. So that's their charge.
Would you use restore also?
Whatever terminology.
We're not talking about new programs.
Whatever terminology is appropriate. I may not have chosen the right word, but there's only so much to go around, and trying to make sure that it's going to last for the next 3 years. That's the challenge. That's the challenge, because you don't want to be in here in a year from today looking at making big cuts for 08-09. It's just.
But I would have been so grateful to know that our kids had at least one more year of a program.
Well,
and also it gives us some time to seek outside solutions so that we can maintain the programs in the long term.
Yeah, I think had we seen this ending balance in April, I understand why we didn't see it then, but we would not have made the cuts that we made. I can see why restoring them now could be problematic, because we know what is likely to happen in the out years. But I agree with Ms. Parker that probably we would have felt that we could have at least made some compromises a little bit if we had been aware that we had a little bit of wiggle room this year. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, because I know that there were reasons why we didn't know that information then. But I guess probably all of us are trying to come to grips with what can we do with this now?
Yeah.
How can we try to go back and maybe reconsider some of the things that we did without putting at risk the next 2 years? Because I'm looking at the undesignated amount for next year would be 1.9, almost 2%. But if we spent the whole 3.26%, then we wouldn't make our 3% reserve next year. So we can't reallocate all of that, assuming that our assumptions, that the assumptions on which the budget is based are reasonably accurate. And I know that that's always a guessing game, and we're have no idea when we get the numbers from the state, and things go on, and we never know when we're going to know exactly what the numbers are. But I think at least I'm looking for some kind of direction in terms of what can we legitimately do now that would be financially prudent, fiscally prudent, but give us a little bit of room to reconsider some of the decisions that we had to make when we thought we were facing a much more dire situation.
And I think, Ms. Cordero, that information would come from the superintendent in speaking with his assistant superintendents at the elementary and secondary level as to what things would possibly be considered. And then they would direct me, Shirley and I, to review those finances and see what the costs were and bring those back to you for further discussion.
What I'd
I
like
believe
to
that's the process that we would
Thanks,
employ.
Mr. Diaz. What I'd like to suggest, actually the superintendent and I have been taking a little sidebar here. What I'd like to suggest is that at the September 11th meeting, which is when we have an item for the actual closing of the books for the previous fiscal year, that we have a companion item that allows us to consider, with input from the assistant superintendents and the superintendent, allows us to consider some possible mitigation of cuts that were made in the current year. I realize it's not as satisfying as doing something before the school year begins, but we will have the expenditures from the previous year nailed down, and that number then, that 85 million, will be a real number. What's concerning to me is that if you look at the flow of numbers, the revenue goes down, the expenditures go up when you compare 06-07 to 09-10, because we will have fewer students, and we have no idea what we can depend on from the state of California. And at this point, we have no budget from the state of California. So with that in mind, I think we bring back the companion items, and we have that discussion about mitigation of programs that have sustained cuts.
And there are parallel initiatives taking place right now in the district with regards to the property that the district has. I am constantly searching for new revenue sources and that can be used for general fund purposes. And I'm not going to go into those here, but yeah, we're going to try to do everything we can to bring in more money for the district to spend. Ms. Parker makes a valid comment with regards to basic aid. You know, with 08, 09, we could be closer to basic aid. I think it would take, just my personal opinion, it would take some modification of your transfer policy to achieve that status that early. The second comment I would make about basic aid is districts typically don't convert to basic aid status until they're well into basic aid. You don't convert to basic aid your first year that you're eligible, because should something happen to you the second year and you have to return to a revenue limit funding model, you lose that lag year that exists currently with the revenue limit model that they base your funding on the prior year. With the basic aid, they don't do that. You have to have that money sitting in the bank to carry you through. $125 million, $80 million is a lot of money to have to carry through. So certainly those discussions are taking place. There's a lot of input that we hear, and you know, we'll do our best to support the decisions that you make and take the direction from you. And
just a
Final
quick
comments?
follow-up on that particular point.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any, will there be any issue with the elementary district qualifying for basic aid status prior to the secondary district, given that we have our single district resolution? Are there any, would we have to have both of them transferred over to basic aid at the same time, or could we do it individually?
You could do it individually. You could do it
And
individually.
the
'Cause
elementary will go years in advance of the
Yeah.
secondary.
Right.
The
Wrap-up
Yeah.
comments, yes? Ms.
You're
Parker?
talking about for September 11th, assumably, I'm assuming it's a conference agenda item with perhaps action at the next meeting if there was
Yes.
something that we agreed on.
Yes.
As part of that, I would like to know, it's a little bit easier in elementary to get music back in after it starts, but junior high, the effect on the schedule and being creative about putting programs back into the junior high after the school year started. I'd really like detailed information about that too.
Okay. I think Mr. Turnbull will be working on it. Dr. Noel?
Yes. I wanted to say a little bit more. I've talked to a number of people in the community, and I share the feeling that they've expressed that we don't know what to believe anymore. We've seen such a flip-flop and so many changes in the numbers that have been presented to us. And this goes back before this episode, actually. You told us very late at night on April 10th, after 11 o'clock, that we had to make $3 to $4 million cuts in budgets. The next meeting, that number is reduced to 2.9 or something like that. Then when we sat down and made the cuts, it was 2.5. Then we come to on June 29th and hear that there's 4 new reserve funds set up with all this money in them. So I think that there's a real crisis of confidence, and it's hard to say this because I don't. Those who know me know that I think systemically and about organizations. I think it's in the system that we have no idea of knowing how much confidence to put in these numbers in light of the presentation we got last time. It's not you.
I understand.
Certainly not you. It's the system.
I understand.
The system doesn't have a way of self-correction that gives assurances to us anymore. And I think, to me, at least in parallel with consideration of ways to restore cut programs, that we need to be taking some steps to restore confidence. And I don't know how to do that by relying upon the system to come up with yet one more set of numbers, which also could be full of errors. So what I'm going to suggest, and I'd really like to make this in the form of a motion, is that we vote tonight to invite the Fiscal Crisis Management and Assistance Team to come in and do an extraordinary audit. I have confidence in them. They do a lot of things around the state. They're supported by the state. They are the watchdog or the overseer when invited, and only when invited. They've been here before. They know us. They recommended, incidentally, that we quit doing our own system, that we turn it over to the county. And that was 5 years ago. We're still considering that recommendation, I guess. So I'd like to make that in the form of a motion, Madam President. I know this is not an action agenda item, but there's an ample precedent for voting from the conference agenda. And that the motion would be that the district, at the earliest possible time, invite FCMAT to come and do an extraordinary audit and account for the very differences and reconcile the numbers with previous sets of numbers so that we can regain confidence in the reporting that we receive.
Dr. Noel, you may want to consider an agency other than FCMAT, because my experience with their management studies, they don't get into the detail of the debits and credits that I think you're talking about, and the review, the extensive review required to restore confidence. I agree. I have a hard time coming up here with these wild fluctuations in numbers.
Well, the man I met from FCMAT before is Anthony Bridges, and if Anthony Bridges comes, I have confidence that he'll get what you're talking about.
Yeah, Shirley wants to say something.
He is extremely competent.
I know him, and I have confidence in his abilities as well.
Go ahead, Ms. Corpus, and then we also still have a public comment on this item.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Dr. Noel. This is just the start of my of my being the director of fiscal services, and what I'm pleading to is give me the chance, because when all these things are going on, I was already there. I knew what was going on. I was a behind-the-scene manager. So as I have told Dr. Sarvis during the interview, you know, if you hire somebody else other than me, that person will have the learning curve. That person will have to learn what the processes are, identify the problems. I have already identified the problems. And I'd like for the board and the district to give me a chance to prove that I can handle my job. I really would like, I don't want the district to spend money on consulting fees right now, which will not be necessary. So I think bringing in a consultant or a FICMAT this early is premature. So, and
Well,
also
when you say that, I mean, I melt because
but
because it makes it very personal, and you know my personal feelings. I will. What can I say? I can only accede and withdraw my motion, which you will notice did not receive a rush of seconds.
Thank you, Dr. Noel. And I also want to address the question of Ms. Parker regarding whether we use the baseline budgeting or zero-based budgeting. I really don't want to use those terms. Those are too complicated for me. The very simple process that we did when we did the 0708 budget on salaries is, because that is 80% of our expenses, is really worked with personnel, with our HR department, look at all the people that they have hired, because we know that we started with terminating, employees, and then we rehired them, and then we rehired our temporary employees also. So as of the date that we were preparing the budget, we looked at all the names to make sure that if personnel said these people will be starting when the school year opens, we have budgeted for those people. So I'm confident that the salaries budget is accurate. All the other items, we just implemented the cut. So it's a very simple process, which we have not done, because what we did in the prior years is depend on the system to roll over, and we didn't roll over whatever is information in the prior year, and did not spend time to analyze if what was rolled over was accurate. And we took the pain of doing that. And so, and working closely, like as Dr. Sarvis has mentioned, I work collaboratively with every department, and that's the goal right now. Everybody that's involved in the business side of the house has to work together, and I think that we have done that successfully so far. So the communication process is improving. The confidence is going to grow first within the district, between directors and departments and all that, and that's our effort. That's the other focus that we have. People will talk to each other before making decisions. It's not my decision, it's not Ed's decision, it's the decision of whoever is affected by that decision. So I hope that clarifies.
May I also speak to confidence in the figures, because we do absolutely have to be confident in the numbers that are in front of us for any number of reasons, to have secure programs, to be able to negotiate fairly, et cetera, et cetera. There are a number of double checks. One double check is a mandatory review on the part of the county. The county's letter will be out tomorrow, I understand. I understand that in the letter they will verify the $2 million overstatement that Shirley has found in the budget. Another check is through our audit process. We'll be going through that again this year. And there's always a bottom line check, to my mind, and that is the year-end calculation. Once you close the budget, then the question is, how accurate were we during this year? And that will be done for the first time on time in a number of years. In years past, this took until October, till November, and you'll recall that we were reluctant to state a position in negotiations because of it. I mean, it was a huge problem to us because we didn't know how much money was in the budget, because we didn't know what the year-end closing balance was. So my compliments already to Shirley to have some projection of that, and Shirley will be anxious to see the year-end close on September 11.
Yeah, just being able to bring you these numbers right now is really a big accomplishment for us, because as I was looking at all the journal entries that I was preparing this period, the ones that I prepared last year were a month. I mean, the August analysis that I did were actually done in October. We were very, very behind last year. So now, as again, to reiterate the mission that Ed and I have decided. I mean, that will be our first mission this year. Is really the timely and accurate reporting. You know, and the other thing that I was requesting is really just to shield me right now from special projects, because that takes up a lot of time too. But but Dr. Noel, again, thank you for withdrawing your motion.
By the
Thank
way,
you, Ms. Corbus.
we will get the county budget analysis and recommendations in the board brief.
Yeah,
we always make that public.
I thought we were going to have a report tonight. We don't.
It's
a
just
county
not
report
out
and
yet.
an auditor report.
The final is not out yet.
We still have public comment on this item.
Okay, I'd like to just make one, I won't say final comment, but an analogy that I would like to share with you and the audience. You guys know I'm a football guy, and you hired me as your coach last November, which in the middle of an arguably a losing season. Okay, we had a losing season. In the spring, we've installed a new offense. We've got a new quarterback. And we are standing here today in August, 2 weeks before the season begins, being asked why we're not in the playoffs. So we need some time. We need some time to work with Shirley's structure that she's changed. We've changed a lot of things there with regards to how people work together, how information is shared, how the flow of information, and those things have come directly from Shirley's leadership. She's exactly right. She needs some time to get her system in play, to get her team members responsive to her, and I do believe that the confidence will be restored. We need to come in here with the good unaudited actuals. We need to come back with a good first interim report. We need to get through a couple of reporting cycles where you don't come in here and have to buckle your seatbelts in your board chair. So I would implore on my behalf, as in support of Shirley's statement, give us a time to operate this our new system and see what it yields. Just like any other NFL coach, hey, if a year from now and we haven't won another game, things could be a lot different. So I understand that. I understand how the business works. So, but I appreciate the opportunity to come forth tonight to clarify some of the questions that everyone has, and we'll be happy to entertain more from the public.
Thank you.
I have one additional question for the board before we hear from the public. Would there be any benefit in looking at our list of cuts at our next meeting, even though we won't have the actuals from the budget? Because my concern is already we will be trying to reestablish or some of the programs after the school year begins. And if we wait until the 11th before we have that discussion, then we have to wait for another board meeting to actually make the decision. Then it becomes even later into the school year before we can actually restore the programs. Is there any way that we could do anything productive in looking at those cuts or revisiting those cuts at our next meeting prior to having the final budget information?
I really think that's a staff question. I think it's up to the staff to go through those lists at this point and try and assign what they think might be realistic. But we also don't have that expenditure figure nailed down.
Right.
I don't think it's a staff question at all, Mrs. Harder. I think it's a question of priorities set by the board.
No, I agree with you that the final decision is certainly the board's.
But the board, I'm thinking that the board should be instructing staff, find this money to save the systems at their junior high schools. You know, not waiting for staff. Staff comes to us.
I guess what I'm suggesting is, do we do it in a vacuum?
I'm not going to go far. I'd like to see us take command and say, these are our priorities, and this is what we want you to accomplish.
I think a number of us have expressed our priority tonight for the arts and for music.
Can we put it into a motion and get a vote because I think it's absolutely right that if we're going to do something to save the impact, particularly at the junior high school level, it has to be done tonight.
I think you create an expectation until that expenditure figure is nailed down. Certainly go ahead and make a motion if you would like to, sir.
Well, I'd like to make a motion. I move that the board instructs staff to find sufficient funds to restore the programs at the junior high schools and at the elementary schools that were cut in April. I'm thinking particularly of the programs directly affecting students. And I'm trying to invent this on the fly, and I don't know whether this is good wording or not, but
well, Dr. Noel, as much as I am really interested in trying to get this done as quickly as possible so that we can restore any programs as early in the school year as possible, I think asking the staff to find the money is basically asking the staff to make other cuts, which is really not their decision to make.
But
our
staff made cuts already.
No, we made cuts. We may have made cuts we don't like, and we may have made cuts that we would wish we hadn't made, but the board took a vote and we made the cuts. The staff did not do that. As much as I would like to be able to blame somebody else, it was our decision.
Mr. Diaz.
And I think we need to take responsibility for the decisions we made, and we need to look at how we can make responsible decisions from this point on. And I don't think asking the staff to look at taking money away from other programs in order to restore these is the appropriate way to do it. We can maybe ask them to come back with a list of things that we can choose, although I think that's I'm not sure that would be productive at this point. I don't want us to take a bad decision and make it worse.
I just don't understand why it's a zero sum when for 2007-8 there's $4 million undesignated funds, an undesignated balance. I don't see that as it's a zero sum when plotted against 2009 and 2010, but it's not a zero sum in 2008.
Okay, well.
There's a motion on the
point of
table.
order.
Is there a second, and we can continue the discussion? Is there a second? Okay, then the motion fails, and we have a public speaker.
Ms. Carolyn Renard.
I expected an explanation of how the extra $5 million happened, who is responsible, how it would be addressed so that it would not happen again. This was not even mentioned in Mr. Diaz's presentation. Instead, the thrust of his presentation has been to imply that the extra $5 million is just a piddling concern, hardly worth getting ruffled about because it will be used up by expenses that have just now been dredged up to be applied against the $5 million. This was done in order to downplay the existence of this extra $5 million that shouldn't be there. It seems to me that the focus of the presentation should be on how it happened, how it will be prevented from happening again. The issue of what to do with the $5 million is a completely separate issue from clearing up how it happened. Instead of being presented with a complete explanation, we've been presented with nothing but a segue into changing the subject, into how the $5 million may be used up in the future. This is not ethical and not acceptable. There should be a full accounting and discussion, and then look at what to do with both, with the extra $5 million, not both in the same breath, as a way of deceiving the public by fogging the issue. The only board members that seem to be interested in actually having an accounting for how this happened and having a full discussion, just from what I've heard tonight, are Ms. Parker and Mr. Noel. As usual, Ms. Harder and Ms. Cordero are more interested in just going on in discussing how the money is going to be used and issues that have to do with that, and just ignoring the whole discussion about how this happened. I just don't think that this is acceptable. Thank you.
Any final comments before we move on from this
Well,
item?
I'm 0 for 2, but let me try for another. Okay? Because I feel that this probably is the nearest thing to a debate on our budget process we're going to have. I think that we need to, we as a board need to lay down the law about the timeliness of information and the provision of it to the public. And I therefore move that a board policy, that we adopt a board policy that requiring all presentations of the board, all documents for the board to be distributed to the board and made available to the public at least 72 hours in advance. That's the advance notice on the agenda, and that none of these handouts at the board meeting are acceptable. They have to be in 72 hours early. That's the motion. My justification is that we have repeatedly received these kinds of documents at the 11th hour, or even closer, without time to do anything about them. That's my motion.
And
second. Okay, comment from Ms. Parker.
I just want to say, Dr. Noel, that I do absolutely agree with you that we need to get information earlier, but I'm concerned about it being some sort of official board policy where then we couldn't get last-minute revisions and then would be delayed in discussing items. So that would need a lot more thought than just doing it this quickly. So,
however, I think maybe we could accomplish.
We're having a very different kind of discussion right now. I just want you to know. Go ahead.
Do you want me to?
No, conclude.
Okay.
Conclude.
Maybe we could just ask the superintendent to direct staff to get us information in a timely manner, much more regularly, and to really reduce the number of instances where we get information at the last minute. I don't want to make it official either, because I also worry that it would keep us from being able to discuss items if the information came in after the 72-hour limit. But I also agree that in principle, it doesn't lead to well-informed decisions, and it also puts the public at disadvantage when information comes at the very last minute.
Now I see Mr. Price poised over his microphone. Go ahead.
May I respond to that as well?
Go ahead, Mr. Price first.
I would just suggest that this aspect of the discussion be wrapped up since it's not agendized, and you can direct staff to bring it back for a further discussion. It's off the mark as far as taking any kind of an action.
Thanks, Mr. Price. Okay, so the next time we will come back to this particular type of discussion will be on September 11th, when we will discuss estimated actuals, and it sounds like a discussion about potential restoration of programs.
May we I anticipated Mr. Price's comment, but I tried to slip it in anyway, Mr. Price. May I ask that the board agenda be written in such a way that it can include a discussion of these kinds of matters about the process? Because if we don't correct the process, we're not going to get the outcomes. And one of the key elements of the process, one of the problems of it, is it's been very late. The public has been very poorly informed, and I think that is a corrective in itself. When the public is here because they see something of interest to them, I think it has its impact on the system, and it helps it produce a more accurate and complete information.
I'd like to have
a part of the discussion, Dr. Noel.
I would just like to have a little bit of discussion on that. So I'm wondering if I could,
we
could. No, I'm saying I wonder if we could do that under item J, future agenda items.
A future agenda item is a suggestion of a future item, not a discussion of not a discussion based on a future agenda item that's been proposed. It's a tough line to.
I said I wanted to ask. I didn't propose.
Okay. Well, we'll
I'll come back to it.
Okay. We are on to September 11th. I just want people to be aware of that date. We are on to our next agenda item, F2, report on response to intervention.
Yes,
Yeah.
Joanne. Where's Joanne? Davis Hayden, yes?
Joanne is, she told me that if she didn't come back, it's because she was too sick to come back to the meeting. So
I see. We'll have to delay this item.
Well, seeing as how we're
Thank
that
you.
number of minutes almost exactly behind.
Puts us right on schedule.
There you
doesn't
go. Do we want to move on to item F3? Probably, because it's a 9:20 item. Report on McKinley Elementary School. I'm sorry, sir, you're out of order, and I'm going to have to conclude the meeting. We're on to item F3, report. This meeting's adjourned.
I think what you need to do is recess the meeting until the room is
Well,
cleared.
but she's now adjourned it with a...
Madam Chairman, when you said adjourned, did you
I
mean
meant
that you were
recessed, taking a
recessing the
recess.
meeting?
That was
Then
my intention, and I misspoke.
A misspeak can be corrected. It
Thank
is
you,
not locked in stone.
Thank you for keeping me on the straight and narrow, Dr. Noel. We were taking a brief recess, and
keep you out of trouble.
thank you. And now we are back in session to take item F3, report on McKinley Elementary School restructuring plan. Well, it was a 9:20 item, and I'm not sure if there were people or if there was a presenter who was planning on coming at 9:20. Okay.
You've lost your flock.
No, they're here. Dr. Carney was the presenter, and it was for 9:20. So, shall we take a break? And
We better take a
okay.
break.
So
Let's
now we
take
are
a break.
taking a break, not a recess, not an adjournment. We will take
Recess.
We'll take a 10. So we're on item F3, report on McKinley Elementary School restructuring plan for 0708. And I see Ms. Sawaski handing out sheets. I don't know if she wants to make the introduction. And we have Dr. Carney here from McKinley School.
Yes, we have Dr. Juanita Carney, principal at McKinley School, and she's here to share her Year 4 restructuring grant, or not grant, she does have a grant, the Quality Education Investment Act grant. But this is really about the restructuring efforts. She met with her, I'll let her tell you more about it, but she did meet with her staff right after school ended in June and had a couple of wonderful days planning, talking about what McKinley really needs to do to increase student achievement and performance, and she's here to share some of the things. She's not spending a lot of time on what is going well necessarily and keep going. She'll mention that, but she's really going to describe what's going to be different.
Good evening, everyone. I was surprised that I was the first person up after the break. That's kind of a nice surprise, actually. I'm going to start with the first slide, and I just want you to know that this is based on signature practices from high-performing elementary schools. I came across this website, and it was really a wonderful website, and it's taking these signature practices, and then it goes to different schools in the state of California that are doing exemplary work in these particular areas. So I was pleased to see that McKinley is doing some of these practices, but there are some that we haven't been doing, or we haven't been doing to the breadth that we can. The next slide, or the first slide actually, is the practice of leadership and school-wide planning. And among all high-performing schools, the grade level teams is extremely important. And we've been doing grade level teams for a number of years. But one of the things that we want to concentrate more on this year is using the real student work to guide the discussions. And also, we're going to continue the work of data analysis of common assessments. And we're happy to note, as you know, that with the report card that's coming up, there's going to be district assessments that are going to really work on data. One of the things that's going to be new this year is our teacher leader for staff development. And we're very fortunate to have a very committed teacher on our staff who is going to be leading our staff development. And we're going to be planning in-services. This was one of the areas in our academic program survey that we needed to work on with staff development. And so we're going to have the teacher leader to do this. The next area of signature practices is goal setting. And the staff development calendar is going to lead ourselves to really focus on those goals and to make sure that we are accomplishing those goals. And also a big area that we want to do that is coming across in all the research is to focus on written work across all the content areas. So I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that, on how we're going to do that. The next slide is on standards and assessments for decision making, and we have a commitment from Dr. John Ewan to work with us on looking at those common assessments and looking at how we can do that data collection. And he's doing a lot of work with the district, but he's going to work specifically with us to look at those assessments that we're using, not only the district assessments, the one we have in school that the teachers are using, and make sure that it is really looking at what we want to, the areas that we really want to work on, and whether that collection of data is the kind of data that we want to be collecting, or if it's data that's not really useful to where we want to be. I talked about the written work across all content areas. We're going to do something very different. For many, many years, we've had grade level writing rubrics. We're going to go with a school-wide writing rubric from kindergarten through 6th grade. We're going to be working on this throughout the year. This is going to be something so that you can have a 6th grade teacher work with a 2nd grade teacher and looking at 2nd grade work and using the rubric to really see if it measures up to what written work, the standard of written work at exemplary level. So it's something that we haven't tried before. We're going to see how that works. But that is something that you're finding in the research too, is looking at student writing work and having a rubric that really is very high standard, high quality. We're going to have even more of a commitment to frequent and precise achievement feedback to students. This is an area too where if children know where they are, where they need to be, then you're going to have more of a buy-in. We've been doing that, but we haven't been doing as much as we need to be, so there's a further commitment. I'm using the word commitment, and this is really going to be our key word for this coming year, is commitment. The teachers are incredible at McKinley School. They work extremely hard. And, you know, to have a PI status, and I've spoken to you before about this, it does have a stigma, but at the same time, none of the teachers feel like it's not something that they are going to, like, oh, poor me, you know, I can't go on. Yes, they do go on, and we still are very, very committed to keep trying to figure out what we need to do and how to do it better. The next slide is curriculum and instructional practice. As Robin said, I'm not going to dwell on the things that we've already been doing, but I do want to say on the Waterford program, we are finding that to be very successful with our kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd grade students. So we have put some money to have a coordinator that's going to customize those lessons for the children. The children go in and they do the Waterford work, but for some of the children that are not getting those skills right when they need to, there's a way to go into Waterford to customize lessons so that they can actually work on that particular skill until they master it. Classroom teachers don't have the time to go in and do that for the children. And so we're going to have a wonderful person also on our staff. We're going to extend her hours to do that and coordinate that for us so that we can customize those lessons for our children. We were the recipient of a QAD grant, and so we're going to have an expanded use of technology this year. I think this is really going to be very helpful for our ELD learners because the visuals are so important for children that are learning a second language. And so we are able to have laptop presenters for our first and second grades. And then we're going to have a roving tech carts with 25 laptops in each cart. And they're going to be shared by 2 grade levels. So, you know, if I'm a 4th grade teacher, I'm going to be able to have a cart come in and there's going to be a laptop for every child. And so, for instance, I've been looking at the new social studies curriculum. There's so much virtual tours that you can do, and that's just going to open the eyes of the kids that need all that stimulation. If you're talking about the Grand Canyon, you can go on a virtual tour just like that. They can see that. They can see the different mountain ranges, so forth. And I think the more that we can do with different modalities for our children, the better. So we're definitely going to be expanding our use of technology. Another area that we're going to work on, we still believe that High Point is the curriculum that we like for our students because we feel it's more meaningful for our English learners and for our population. But what we're going to do is we're going to instead of leveling, which I've spoken to you about before, where we take all 4th, 5th, and 6th graders and we test them, and then if, say, a 6th grader is tested out in level B, which is more the 5th grade level, then that's where they're going to be. What we're going to do this year, we're going to try it. We're going to have all 4th graders be level A, 5th graders be level B, 6th graders be level C, except for those students, of course, that test out of those levels. Then they're going to be doing a small group, and they're going to be going, whether it be independent study and they're going to work on literature, or whether we're going to use open court units. We haven't quite decided that yet. But the bulk of our kids, we're doing this because we want to see if it's going to make a difference to push those kids even harder. And we're going to do that by the differentiated instruction. So therefore, if you're a 4th grader and level A is still difficult for you, there's going to be the reading support teacher that's going to help you with that. But still, they're going to be able to be at the level that they need to be in that for that 4th grade, 5th grade, or 6th grade. So it is something that we discussed at length. It is something the teachers want to try. Because we feel that we need to give a little extra oomph to the children. So this is definitely going to be very new for us to restructure. The next area is staff development, teacher leadership, and collaboration. We're going to be heavy on in-services and staff development, as I've said to you. It's going to be directly on assessed needs. One of the things that I'm going to talk a little bit more about the QEIA grant, but one of the areas that they're really big on is staff development. And it just happened to coincide with what we've been already talking about based on the academic program survey is the need for staff development. Fits right into what we need to do for QEIA. We have excellent teachers at Mckinley School, and we're going to continue to develop teacher leaders. Stephanie Clark, who's going to be our new staff development leader, she's just going to be the first, I hope, of many. We really, last year, and actually when we first got into program improvement, where we started out with special education, the regular ed and special education teachers have gotten very, very close. And so we're going to continue and streamline that collaboration. We do have a very large special education population at Mckinley School. and we're definitely going to continue the focus of collaboration of grade level teams. The teacher is the critical factor. I think we all would say that that's so true. And the teacher needs to feel supported and also to feel that he or she has all the tools that they need. The next area is student support. We want to have a renewed focus on the whole child. We really do feel that it is very important, of course, to teach the reading, the English language arts, the math, the social studies and all, but we want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the whole child. We're going to be putting some money in for early intervention for kindergarten students. We still have students coming into kindergarten that are not prepared for kindergarten, and we want to catch them early, and so we're going to have someone work specifically with them on their readiness skills. One of the I guess you'd say the pluses, perhaps, if there is such a plus of being a program improvement school, is that we did qualify for the QEI grant. And I think one of the best things about the QIA grant is the 25-to-1 in 456. And we're going to start that. We didn't have to do that until the second year, I believe. But we think that it's very important to do that right away. So our 4th, 5th, and 6th grade classes will be 25-to-1. You probably know that we were also the recipient from an anonymous donor that had funded Cesar Chavez and Franklin, and so we are going to have a it's just mind-boggling to me. We're going to have a full-time art teacher, a full-time art teacher intern, and an art room that is equipped, and our students are going to have art, and it's just fabulous because this ties in, of course, to the whole child, and to be able to really support some of the qualities that our children bring to school and really develop those. We're going to continue with our physical education program. The parents are totally behind that, and so we're going to be able to fund that ourselves. We're going to, we do have assemblies, but we're going to really focus on monthly assemblies that feature achievements, particular academic achievements. So really raise that awareness by everybody that, you know, we want to celebrate when this group of children know their 6 timetables, or this group of children can come up and talk about the group work they did in social studies or whatever. So we're going to work on that, and then we're going to continue with RTI. We're going to try to do the interventions after school. This was a concern with some of the teachers of trying to get everything in, and so we're going to see how that goes with interventions after school. And the last slide is family and community partnerships. It seems like every year we're doing something new at Mckinley. This was started by 2 or 3 families, and it really was sponsored by our ELAC committee, but had a tremendous outpouring. 95% of the families, and this was almost, I'd say, 3/4 of the families turned in the questionnaire. 95% of the families wanted uniforms. So we are going to, of course it's voluntary because we're a public school, but we're going to have uniforms at McKinley School. We're going to continue with our parent education classes. We believe that is something else too. I've always believed that the parents are their child's first teachers, and the parents want to know more about how to work with their children. So we're going to continue with our parent education classes, continue with our CBET classes. And then we have a wonderful community partnership with lots of different organizations and businesses. And so they are fully support our art and technology and tutorial programs at McKinley School. So, you know, I don't have the full understanding yet of the scores, but just of the STAR scores, but just the work that I did, we may not have gotten out a PI this year, it looks like. But I can tell you that we have made very good growth in many of the grade levels, and particularly the ones that we really concentrated more on. And so I'm sure when we report again in the fall, I can give you more specific information. But I really do believe that we're on the right track. I think that we have a lot of things in place. I think that what we need to do is to be more focused in some of the areas. And I think some of the areas, and this is coming from the staff, we had some really good conversations about what we wanted, what we needed to do, based on those 2 meetings that we had at the end of June. I think there were about 3 or maybe 4 teachers that couldn't make it because they had already had vacation plans. But there was that enthusiasm, like I said, the commitment. So we are committed. We are committed to getting out of PI and to keep, you know, raising the bar for our students. And so there's some of the things in here that are new. We're going to do our best to make sure that they are successful. So I am open for questions.
Thanks, Dr. Carney. I don't know if Ms. Sawaski had anything else she wanted to add before we move on to board questions or comments. I couldn't tell if you were looking at me to add anything. Okay. Okay. Questions, comments from board members? Go ahead, Ms.
I
Cordero.
had one question from the beginning of your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
I was interested in the difference between grade level writing rubrics and school-wide rubrics. Could you just explain a little bit about how you do a school-wide rubric and what is the expected benefit of that?
Okay. I have to admit I'm going to be learning too, because we really haven't delved into that. But one of my teachers was part of the National Writing Project, and she did it for 2 years. And they were back in the Midwest, where they graded papers from 2 or 3 different states in the country, and they used a school-wide rubric. And so that was really the first that I had heard of that, because before it's each of our grade levels have grade level rubrics, and it's based on a point system, and it talks a little bit about the types of writing samples they can use, et cetera, et cetera. And those are specific writing functions that happen like 3 times a year. You know, we do the writing samples. But what's different about this is that every month teachers are going to come in with written work, whether it be written work from math, where they're having to explain why they got a particular answer, but in, using sentences, et cetera, or social studies or whatever. They're going to come in with their written work in these different content areas, and then we're going to use the school-wide rubric, and we're going to grade those samples. So it's different than saying, third grade, all third graders are going to be writing about the trip that they took to Lake Kachuma, or the trip they might have taken to the Natural History Museum, or whatever. It's going to be based on their daily written work in the different content areas. As far as what the school-wide rubric looks like, what we're going to do is we're going to change it a little bit so that we're more in keeping with the far below basic to advanced levels, because the one that they used nationally was a 7-point scale, so we want to try to reduce it if we can to a 5-point scale.
So you may or may not be able to answer this question,
okay,
since you said that you're still learning about it. But
yes,
when you do that, when you have a school-wide rubric, how do the rubrics then reflect the standards?
They reflect the standards because they're based on what the standards are for written language per se. And so it has, like I say, I can't converse with it as much as how shall I say it, as educated as I would like to be on it, because we are just going to be working on that. Next week we're going to get started working on that. But that was agreed to by staff.
Ms. Turnbull.
It sounds
Mr.
like a
Turnbull has
fascinating
comment.
process, and I'm just interested in how it works.
I can add to that. When I was the principal of Goleta Valley Junior High, we implemented a school-wide rubric. And we did that partially incorporating some of the International Baccalaureate standards, partially incorporating the 7th grade writing standards from the CDE. I'm sure that the 4th grade writing standards would also be included. The strength of a school-wide rubric, say that 5 times fast, is in its vagueness. And so you literally have the 5 columns up to advanced, as Dr. Carney was talking about. But it applies across all subjects, because you can say, for example, did the paper address the topic in question? The topic could be science, it could be art, it could be English. And then you go through mechanics, you go through register, you go through a variety of different things. And I think probably one of the more valuable parts is marketing. Kids hear the same thing over and over and over. The teachers use the same language. Collaboration is easier. You're not talking about different products, apples to oranges, from grade to grade. It's a very effective process.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. I appreciated that.
Other questions? Comments? Okay. I mean, I had one comment to make, and it's as much to Ms. Sawaski as it is to you, you know, in the unique position that Mckinley School is in this year with QAA funding and that sort of thing. And it's a concern on my part having to do with multiple goals and then, you know, multiple action items that are associated with the goals. And the ability to be successful at all of those goals. So you're talking about changing, you know, the culture, the belief system at the school. And I guess it makes me concerned that maybe there should be fewer foci, fewer goals. Does that make any sense? So many balls in the air.
I agree. I mean, I guess, you know, to be frank, I would say that we are making steady progress, and it's not to say that everything shouldn't be looked at, because I think it should be, and I think that we need to look at what's working and what isn't. I don't think what we're going to be working on for this coming year is really too outside of the box for us as far as what we wouldn't have done ordinarily, because it seems to me I know for a fact, even before we were a PI school, I've always thought of Mckinley as being very innovative. And we've always looked at, you know, what we're doing and what we need to do best, because we're always there for the children. And so is there more guidelines and things that we must do? Yes, of course. And so we have to make sure that we are doing those things. Is there a lot on the plate? Absolutely, there is a lot on the plate, no question. But you know, I think that if we feel, and certainly if I feel, that the teachers are getting to a point where it is just too much, then I think, you know, I would have to have a conversation with Robin and just say, you know, this is too much, and we need to go back and really look at, you know, a particular area, because it is like I say, I'm just a strong supporter of the teachers. The teachers are the ones that are delivering the system, and I think that we want to always make sure that they have what they need, and they are not feeling so overwhelmed like it's, oh my goodness, you know, I can't do everything.
I mean, you'll have data back soon. I mean,
Yes.
it's embargoed until tomorrow morning, correct?
Oh, no, it's longer.
Oh, okay. Well, we're not agendized for that discussion, but
Right.
you'll have more data soon, and presumably with your new data collection effort,
Yeah.
you'll have some quicker feedback about what is effective and
Right.
what isn't.
Right.
And you'll be,
Well,
I assume,
think your
performing that
point
kind of
is
analysis.
well taken, though. There's a lot going on at the school, and a lot of these things are wonderful. I mean, it's wonderful to have art and PE and uniforms and just so many supplemental materials and High Point. But the focus on those things that are likely to produce incremental achievement increases, especially among English learners, is something that is a critical point for the school. And Robin and I will be spending time with the school on that.
And yeah, I do want to add, it looks like a lot in this presentation, and I know Juanita worked hard looking at those effective best strategies for from effective schools. She's used the academic program survey that the county office and the Center for Educational Leadership led their staff through. They've done this now maybe 3 times, I think.
At least 2, yeah.
Yeah. And so they're using all of that. And so all the things big and little are included here, but really the focus of the QEIA grant, the district elementary focus, as you know, the initiative with ELD, and then we have response to intervention that's looking at those students who aren't really, making grade level standards. It's really all targeted on the rigor and the teaching and learning. I mean, it's right to the core, and having the staff just jump forward, really, I mean, with enthusiasm to take over their professional development. And the QEIA grant is like, when I think of it, I think of the class size reduction and I think of professional development.
Yeah,
that's
those
a
are the
huge
2
thing. You're
areas, yeah.
required to have at least a third of your teachers go through 40 hours of professional development. So they're taking all this on, and so it really is about the teacher development and the rigor in the classroom. And everything else just falls in and is aligned with it. So it may look like a lot, but it's very targeted and strategic. And we'll look at the data and we'll see,
Right.
specifically which of those programs add most to that.
Well, and it's still going to be the English learners, as Dr. Sarvis has mentioned. That's the bulk of our population, and that's the area that we're continuing to look at, and that's why we're re-looking at the High Point, because we want to see if that's going to even boost the children up. So many of these things, like I said, we're already doing. There are probably at least 3 things that are going to be newer for us, but it's still within the road that we're traveling or have traveled. So it's not outside the box, because I think if we go too outside the box at this point, then I think that's where we might start to, get unraveled. But yeah, the focus, is certainly on the English language arts and our English learners.
Any other questions or comments? No. Thank you very much for
Oh,
joining us this evening.
You're very welcome.
We appreciate the report.
Thank you.
We are on to item F4, discussion regarding gang violence, what schools can do to minimize risk. And it's a few minutes after 10, so I am assuming that we will not
I'm assuming we will not
back
get
to
on to E5, yes.
Right, okay. Particularly since we have a number of consent agenda items to deal with as well.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Sarvis.
Well, every board member has expressed concern about gang violence and student safety. The staff is prepared to describe what we've been doing and what we're anticipating doing in the future, but this item is really on the agenda for a board discussion about what kinds of modifications to facilities, additional programs might make a difference in prevention of gang violence.
Oh, board members, feel free to jump in.
Did I misunderstand? Dr. Sarvis said it. We're going to hear what staff is doing?
If you'd like. I put it on because I understood the board members wanted to be able
Well, I
to
asked to have
discuss
it on, but I would love to know what's going on. Otherwise, I'll just assume nothing's going on and make some
Okay.
suggestions.
In that event, I would like both Michael Gonzalez and Barbara Chiani, are you? Good. To come to the podium. But I'm concerned about squandering what time we have on just a recount of what we've already reported on. So if we could do that quickly and talk about the things we still think we need to do.
Well, are they
yes.
simply going to report, or we've gotten some documents from them?
Yes.
Is that all? That's it?
No, there's plenty more than that,
Oh,
and
okay.
we could prepare a big report on this.
Okay.
I thought you wanted to have a discussion about it. Let me ask Michael to report, and if that's not going in the direction you expect it to, then then please stop us.
Yeah, I'm happy to have a discussion about it. It would be nice to have it informed by what's going on.
Okay, good.
Thank you. I will simply share with you that from our end, our initiatives, the current initiatives that we're initiating are the three that we suggested to you folks at the Joint City Council meeting. You may recall that we talked about establishing a parent education program based on the kind of information and model that that Richard almost presented to us. Second, to make sure that a full complement of campus supervisors, trained campus supervisors, are available at our secondary sites in August. And then third, we are currently investigating putting on what I will label community liaisons at 3 of our secondary schools. Those are the present initiatives. In addition, under the leadership of Paul Turnbull, we're currently getting together with our secondary principals to make sure that we have not left out any other initiatives that they deem appropriate. I know that Paul is looking at the concept of video cameras that and how they might help secure our schools. We are looking at a community forum where we will invite experts within the area to suggest other initiatives that we might want to initiate. For example, we have scheduled on September 11th at 8 o'clock a meeting with Dr. Victor Rios, a sociologist out at UCSB who's done considerable work in the area of youth violence. Those are the principal initiatives that we are currently undertaking in the district.
Well, let me add just a couple of things to that, because when we started to do our research on gangs, we looked at gang units, for example, and what was effective. We have correspondence from the Los Angeles Unified Anti-Gang Initiatives. We've looked at what police groups have done that they think have been effective, more effective than policing. We think we need probation officers at the schools. We used to have them, or used to have more of their time at the schools. We'll be meeting with the county next week to talk to them about issues like that. We think we need gang intervention specialists. That's a big need, and it's more than just changing a facility. I mean, we've already undertaken things like dog searches, and we'll continue to do that. But we think we need people who work directly with kids, and we think we need to start young, especially at the elementary level.
That was really the one comment that I wanted to make. The one thing that stood out to me is I really think we need to be starting at upper elementary. I mean, I appreciate focusing on, consulting with secondary principals, but I think that we need to be engaging our elementary principals as well. And I'm sure that you've thought of that long before I ever did.
I have stacks of things here. We'll also be receiving back a report from the city on an expansion of after-school activities. And of course, we have a strong role in that in terms of getting kids to those activities. we have plenty of after-sports activities at the junior high level that are not well attended, and we think we carry a major responsibility in getting kids to those. Barbara?
I just wanted to add to address your point, is that I've been having conversations with Robin Sawaski about some of the great things that are coming down the pike out of the elementary district, improved communication between schools, opportunities for kids to interact. I believe there was some discussion of a postcard type project or something where kids are communicating, pen pal, excuse me, where kids are communicating with other kids across town. Also athletic types of events where, again, you have, I remember Robin was just talking about Peabody and Harding, I believe, having soccer, was it soccer? And so we're putting that kind of information together of communicating within ourselves of what are some of the ideas and strategies we can be using that are hopefully going to be very effective towards building bridges between our own school community, within our own school community.
And one other thing that most of the principals in the elementary district have already signed up for. There's a national speaker, anti-bullying guy that's coming to our schools in September, and they're sharing the costs. And he's coming to speak with the students, and then at two schools on a day, and then he's going to be working with the two staffs together in the afternoons. And so they're sharing that and moving that through the district. We'll have the schedule soon.
And then on top of that, you look at the expanded programming that Parks and Recreation is putting together, particularly at the junior high level. That's another exciting component of their response and partnership with the school districts.
Is that after school?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Great.
I think that more recent research has demonstrated that just policing activities don't work. And so I'd be particularly interested in hearing more about the parent education component that Mr. Gonzalez mentioned, and also in hearing more about the gang intervention specialists, what that would entail, what grade levels it would reach out to, what a program would look like, that sort of thing. I'd be very interested. And also I'd be interested, I mean, I want other board members to chime in hearing about some video camera surveillance in key spots on campuses. So I don't, if other board members have ideas they want to throw out there or things they're interested in learning about.
Well, I was reading a really interesting report that came from, I think the agency is called Justice Development Institute, and they just published a fairly extensive report on gang prevention and gang intervention in July of this year. And it mentioned exactly what Mrs. Harder just stated, that the data seems to suggest that policing practices are not particularly effective in addressing the gang participation by students, and that other activities, the expansion of after-school activities, other kinds of things are much more effective. And so I'd really like us to sort of follow up on that. And in doing so, I was looking at, interestingly enough, I didn't even know this existed. The city of Santa Barbara actually had a plan in 1998 that was published in what is it called? The Organization of Cities, or whatever that group is. The League of Cities, thank you, the League of Cities. From then Mayor Harriet Miller, and outlined a variety of things that the city was going to do, which I'm not sure that we actually have in place. And it seems like some of those might be worth looking at again. They included an expansion of mentoring and internship kind of programs for students, an expansion of kind of like ROP type kinds of activities for students. Certainly the parent education component was mentioned, and after school activities. But there was a lot of items, the teen center, which at that time was foreseen to be elsewhere other than where it is now. But a lot of the things that we either have seen or I think could still use were included in that plan. And it seemed to be, I think, was being published as a sort of a model plan. And so it was worth looking at it again. Also, just earlier in our closed session, we talked about the the fact that we were talking about it in the context of a particular case, but I think it's worth looking at in general, that when a student is expelled from our district, we don't have any way of determining whether the student actually continues in school. The student may or may not go to El Puente. If the student doesn't go to El Puente or doesn't enroll in any other school, we don't necessarily know. El Puente doesn't necessarily know if they're enrolled someplace else or not. And so we could have students who are kind of falling between the cracks and don't really know if that's happening. Now, I don't know if staff members are saying that that's not happening, or I don't know.
Well, my first impression about any student's CUME file, we only would release it if another school requests it. So if there's an open partnership with a Puente, et cetera, then if a student's being expelled, it would come from a school, be housed here until the expulsion is finalized and approved. And then my assumption is that the CUME follows the student. As students who transfer into our district from outside the district,
so if the student never enrolls anyplace else,
it would stay
the
here.
CUME file would stay here. And do we have a process by which anybody follows up on those CUME files that stay here?
I would believe that there's, and I haven't done it personally, but my understanding would be that there's a release form. You literally have to say, I will release this to you as soon as you request it, if you're the requesting agency.
I think I understand what you're saying, but what I'm asking is, if a parent never enrolls a child, the child never goes anyplace else, and let's just assume the child has dropped out of school.
Let me address
Would
that.
we have any way of following up with that?
I think you're asking us to go a step farther, and I don't know what part of this we have in place, but for every expelled student, we should know where they went, and at the end of the year, we should be able to report that. That out of 90 expelled students, so many went to El Puente or went off to another program. Yes.
Right, but what I'm concerned about is not so much at the end of the year, because by then it may be too late. The student has disappeared. What I'm concerned about is if we expel a student in September,
yes,
how do we follow up to make sure that the student is actually enrolled somewhere?
Yeah, let us bring this back.
Okay.
We can do that.
Other comments, questions?
I just wanted to say that I also saw that report from the city that Harriet Miller had signed off on. And I think that was in response to a grant that was going on in the late 90s. So some things were put in place and some things they ran out of funding for. But it is absolutely a great blueprint for us to look back on what we can do. I'm not sure if you're talking about the report that was looking at the comparison between New York and Los Angeles and the anti-gang
Washington,
practices
D.C.,
there.
yeah.
It came out of Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
But one of the questions I had was, you're talking about a gang specialist coming in, or an anti-gang specialist coming in on a one, sort of a short-term basis. Have you looked yet at curricula for elementary and secondary level, that's something that the teachers are using in the classroom on a longer-term basis?
We have not found curriculum that's gang specific. I mean, we have general anti-bullying, our character counts, our character ed programs, but we have not found a specific curriculum that we think is an effective curriculum.
So would there be the opportunity of having a administrative and teacher committee that builds a curriculum for our school district, based on bits and pieces, I suppose, from elsewhere? But I would just like to see something that we can put in place, that we can see if it's effective and use it over time instead of having just special programs here and there.
It's a good idea to put together a committee, obviously, just to bring in different ideas from different sources, and the Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse is one of those sources. Youth service specialists are in the classrooms in the high schools anyway, using a curriculum called Too Good for Drugs and Violence. And there has to be, obviously, the drugs and alcohol association, but the violence association can be, I think, increased upon. And it's paid out of school safety, and We're actually in the final year of our grant period in our MOU with CADA, and so this is a time to start having those discussions.
And elementary also uses Too Good for Drugs, K-6.
Unfortunately, I suspect LA Unified is probably the only one of the few districts that has something like that. I mean, I don't know if it's worth looking at. I'm not that I necessarily would want their curriculum, but it may be a starting basis for examining something like that.
It's not on their list, but I will say that police agencies, school agencies, those that have been effective in curbing gang violence, talk about having people on the streets to work with kids. And in fact, that's something we did years ago.
Two points that I want to make. I think that students, children, young people participate in gangs because of the reality of their lives. And unless we change the reality of their lives, we don't have a very good chance of really keeping them out of gangs. And obviously we can't change their socioeconomic status, we can't change a variety of factors in their lives, but we can change some things, such as students who are not experiencing success in school are more likely to lose interest, more likely to drop out. Students who drop out or are not on schedule to graduate are more likely to be participating in gangs, et cetera. We can change some of those aspects of their lives. But the other point I want to make is, having participated in a number of community meetings around this issue in the last year, parents are very specific in asking for things like more jobs for young people, more activities for young people. I think it's really important that in whatever kind of committee we set up, that we have parent representation and student representation. There needs to be a lot of young people. We need to listen to what they have to tell us about what they need.
Awesome. I've heard the Parks and Recreation, you said something about they're expanding their programs.
Yes.
And after school programs, you said more activities after school or jobs. What a great idea. Whether also, I just want to include in that also the summer, that the summer is long and kids need activities. And if we can get the Parks and Recreation, maybe some other programs along the summer, jobs, that might be beneficial as well.
They certainly seem to be working very hard towards providing new opportunities. I think it's clear that that's a mission that they're on.
Well, we need an update from the city because they were applying for an enormous grant from the state for jobs and job preparedness for students.
And they're also pursuing a jobs initiative, and we've talked with Roger Horton about it. Paul and I just met yesterday with Babatunde Foliemi about programs that would get kids employed in vocational skills.
Okay. Other comments, Dr.
I
Noel?
wanted to ask Mr. Gonzalez some questions. I didn't fully understand. You ticked off several points. Could you, what was the first one? An information model?
A parent education program modeled after the kinds of issues that Richard Amos brought up during his presentations in the district last year. Okay. That was the first one. The second one was to make sure that we began the school year with a full complement of campus supervisors, trained campus supervisors. A la Richard Ramos.
Safety officers?
Campus supervisors, yes.
Is that the same as a safety officer?
Correct.
Okay, that was the part I didn't know.
No, that's not it's not a county police, like a sheriff deputy or a city.
I didn't hear that term. I asked in personnel about those jobs, and they call them campus safety officers. And I didn't know he was talking about the same people.
Okay.
Same people, right?
Good.
Correct.
Okay.
And then the third initiative was what I labeled as community liaisons, what our superintendent labeled as gang specialist, gang intervention specialist. Those are the three initiatives that we're currently working, and we'll present proposals for funding for that.
And what's this about video cameras?
But I will defer to Mr. Turnbull. I will simply share with you that in a conversation early this summer, one of the things that Paul has been exploring for some time is the concept of setting up cameras within our schools. And there's lots of pros and cons, but I won't go beyond that. Paul, if you'd like to make any comment.
It all started, or my investigation into cameras and the use of cameras started at Santa Barbara High School, mostly because of the topography of the campus itself, that it's just a very intricate campus, and having campus supervisors actually be able to see each other one-on-one and cover ground is very difficult. So the idea was to get 4 cameras in high traffic areas, then allowing campus supervisors to not have to be in those areas necessarily, and the cameras could do the work for them, essentially. And you know, every time you look at something like that, cost becomes the issue, the motivating issue. And so the areas on Santa Barbara High School's campus that I looked at specifically were the entrance just off of Canon Perdido between Nopal and the actual entrance onto the backside of the campus, because there's the 70s and 80s building, there's the shops, and there are, between La Cuesta and a variety of other things just off of Milpas, there's a lot of traffic, and we're not quite sure of who it is exactly that's visiting us, although we're very happy people want to come to school, even if they're 30.
Well,
So
some of them are selling drugs across the street.
well, some of them are doing things across the street, and that's part of the beauty of this, is that there would be 2 cameras potentially that we looked at. One was on the upper level of the 80s building. It could be actually mobile, and you could move it from the office. You can, a lot of them are web-based now, so you can log on from anywhere if you have the appropriate signature. And then there were 2 sort of closer to the inside of the campus itself that are known as sort of heavy traffic areas. And essentially that's what we were looking at. It could be cost effective if labor is taken out of it, and you still have to run a lot of wires. You can't do wireless things on certain campuses because of construction and angles and a variety of other things.
President Harder, if you'd permit me, I'd like to make one other comment that, again, I shared with you folks a couple of months ago. One of the critical elements in intervening with youth violence is the coordination of resources. You know, I was speaking to Craig. We had an experience earlier this summer where a number of 16-year-olds came to us wanting, their parents wanted them involved with some kind of activity during the summer. And I had met with them and volunteered. We could not offer them paid positions within the district, but we could offer them volunteer work. When I met with these parents and the youngsters, I then called the city and said, wait a minute, I understand that the city has just funded a number of employment opportunities for youth. I spoke with the people who ran that program. These were 16-year-olds that I was speaking to, and it turned out that these jobs were not available. My point simply is that we need to make sure that our efforts are very coordinated. Dr. Sarvis mentioned to you probation officers. I'm the representative of the district in the Juvenile Justice Commission. We had a number of conversations where essentially the probation department said, you know what, our proposal is to move the probation officers that are assigned to a truancy program to work in high schools with gangs. I took the position that why does it have to be either or? How is it that the county of Santa Barbara does not have the resources to do both? A agreement was made that they would assign these folks to the high schools. I pointed out to them, wait a minute, we're talking about a 14-year-old who's accused of murder at a junior high. We need these kinds of probation officers working with a much younger population. And you folks have said, how about the elementary schools? My point simply is it requires a kind of coordination that does not currently exist. That's another initiative that we need to undertake.
Could you tell me more about the training of the campus safety officers?
No, I think that is a question best reserved for the Director of Human Resources. Chris is not currently available, but that should be directed to Dr. Robertson.
What about the goals of the training?
I cannot speak to that either. I shared with you that 2 years ago we presented an outline of training that should be included for the campus safety officers, but I cannot tell you that I know its current status.
Are we going to give them a raise?
We did give them a raise earlier this year. I'm not sure. I need to make sure the board understands that all of us have pretty much been sitting on the sidelines waiting for corrected budget information before we present proposals for you. The September deadline is not only true for the board, it's also true for the staff. And so we've been hesitant to present anything till we know where our finances are, and in about less than a month we'll know.
I asked because I had asked at the personnel office, and they tell me that's after the raise, it's $17 an hour for the campus safety officer. Which to me is absurd. That's just not enough money if you envision a trained, professionalized group of people. You're not going to recruit anybody at that.
You know, I think
mean to argue with you. I just want to make that statement.
You're correct, and I simply want to point out to you that earlier this evening we talked about the great relevance of an elective program and an arts program, and staff is going to come to you with one additional need, and I wish us luck in determining how we allocate resources.
Well, I think the first thing is to identify the need, and you know that, and put a price on it. I was very much interested in the several of the things you said. One was the training of this group of campus security officers, and felt that is an area that absolutely has to be addressed. But I think the organization of them also has to be, and I guess you've alluded to that, about the lack of coordination. I'm not sure that's what you're talking about, but my sense is, I put it this way, if I wanted to go to the central repository of expertise and information on the gang problem in this district, where would I go? And my sense is that nowhere.
Well,
that I do know some principals who know about it, and I know some bystanders who know a little bit about it, but I don't see any centralized repository of that expertise. Now, why is that important? I'm hardly a fan of centralization, but in some areas I think it may be important, and one of them has to do with information. The problem is not unlike a problem that is encountered in other areas, where intelligence is critically important if you want to get into preventive mode. You have to know what's going on. And there's a lot of information out there, and I'm sure the police department has a lot of information. But what I don't see is a coordinated system for sharing that information, and I don't see a locus in our organization to do that interface. And I think that would be a very important thing to explore.
If I could just interject just quickly, there is an entity called the Gang Task Force. The Gang Task Force. And the Gang Task Force is actually comprised of people from probation, the police department, the city, schools, and they do meet very regularly. Jean McRae, an assistant principal at Santa Barbara High, is one of those representatives. And so she would come back and speak with her colleagues and with the principals as well.
Now, but is that the information they get? I mean, is it?
That's interagency.
Mm-hmm.
So
and it's very timely
in our district.
No, when we look to our own expertise, we look at each school and what they do jointly, especially through Paul's coordination, Michael Gonzalez and Barbara Chiani, but they all wear a lot of other hats.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm you know, I'm urging you to hire another bureaucrat. No, actually, no, but I see a real problem here of giving this a sense of professionalism and a sense of expertise that goes above what people who are doing a dozen other things can possibly do. And a database is terribly important if you want to get ahead of the curve on this stuff, and this is just well known. So that's something that I would urge be considered. I like the video camera idea. What happened to the idea last time you were here in a different capacity, Mr. Turnbull? It was the same subject. I had talked about closing campuses, and you said, well, you're thinking about that. That's on the agenda. That's a year away, I think was your phrase. Well, that was over a year ago. Mm-hmm. What's going on about closing campuses?
I completely support it, as do the parents who I've spoken with over the course of the year. The issue is the kitchen, frankly. Excuse me. Until we have a kitchen that can adequately feed almost 2,300 to 2,400 students, closing the campus is just sheerly a bad idea. So,
well, closing doesn't mean imprisoning them. I mean, you can still
I understand.
You can still open the gate.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. The issue, though, is that.
But why does this process have to wait till the kitchen's done? It seems to me that this is a little higher priority than.
We have to be able to feed them.
Currently,
and you're right, it doesn't amount to 2,400 students. I understand.
Okay, one can start the process of closing the campus and still allow students to go off campus to eat.
You're not talking about a policy, you're talking about a physical barrier.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm talking about a fence, you know, a good-looking fence at that nice campus, especially. Well, I'm talking about, and I'm talking about a project that's going to take time and money. It won't be done in a year. I think even if you said, I want it done, it won't be done, because you're right, it's a complicated campus.
Are you talking about doing that at all 3 campuses?
Yeah, yeah. Well, but in deference to what the principal's assessment is, but yeah. In the Santa Barbara case, I've heard it from Mr. Turnbull, but I've heard it also directly from parents who say, you know, we want to close campus.
Well, I'm certainly not opposed to it. And it's a unique campus because it's the only one you can actually drive through. From point A to point B, there are multiple exits. And this year we closed the actual campus on one side and we redirected traffic for obvious reasons during the March event. And so we wanted to make sure that, you know, there are procedures in place. And yes, I agree, and I've walked the campus and I can tell you where the exits are and where the issues are.
So it's really
again,
a matter
planning.
of making a decision and putting it up on the priority list. I'm looking at you, but I'm really talking to my colleagues. I just, out of curiosity, I called the police, the investigations unit today, and as of now, there have been no arrests and no charges made in the second gang stabbing. And I can't help it, and I don't want to sound like an alarmist, but I'm alarmed. Because probably there's a good likelihood that a murderer may be coming to our campuses in the fall. And that's really troubling. And whoever did that's out there. And this gets me to the main point of an article I wrote, maybe you saw it or not, I don't know, about weapons. And I can listen to and resonate with the many suggestions about the gang problem and the many different multi-level approaches with which I agree, every one of them, from the Ramos, the family-oriented approach to putting probation officers there to work. I like your phrase, Dr. Sarvis, what works is working with kids on the street. I don't know how we do that as a school system, but if it works, we ought to be thinking about it. Maybe a new definition of what it means to be a security officer. We'd have to get Mr. Price to tell us the limits of our extension. But I'm terribly concerned, and especially I became concerned after reading the Healthy Kids Survey data, and looking into that a little bit, that there are just I'm convinced, based on those data, and on talking to the people at WestEd who explained to me their argument with you, or your argument with them, Dr. Hayden, that when all's said and done, there's information in those data that it at least would suggest that we do a more detailed analysis using a school by school breakdown and disaggregating the variables, because I only looked at the information that was available for the district as a whole, and I had made inquiries about getting the data set and found that would be a difficult thing for an individual member of the board to get. So I would like to see, at minimum, a more serious examination of those data to learn. There's a lot. I think we can learn a lot about who is feeling the anxiety, who's afraid. The numbers, even when you just discount them for error, and incidentally, I'm not talking sampling error, because I wrote my piece based upon the actual number of respondents, not whether they represent the larger population of students. So it wasn't a sampling problem. The problem was measurement error, and that's where Bailey, is that his name, the fellow you communicated with at WestEd? The senior statistician at WestEd explained to me what their research on error is in their study. So if you discount the numbers by 2%, you still have several hundred instances district-wide of instances of weapons being on campus, and verified by many more hundreds of instances of people giving testimony in the survey that they saw weapons on campus. Which does that mean there were in fact weapons on campus? I'm not willing to dismiss it. I'm not willing to say it confirms it, but it certainly is suggestive of a question that we need to look at and look at seriously and urgently, in my opinion. Because whatever else we do at all the multiple levels one has to pursue to try to get this problem under control, you still have to keep the weapons off campus. It doesn't matter. The percentage of reports of kids who said they brought guns on campus was very small, but it's still more than a handful, and one's too many. One's too many. If the survey is so wrong that only one out of the ones they say is true, that's one too damn many. So I think and that's what makes me feel a sense of urgency about, in closing, at least you can start to focus it. It would, I'm reticent to talk about metal detectors, but they have been used elsewhere. They are used elsewhere. I'd certainly like to know whether they have a good deterrent effect, because all this is about deterrence. And, we're not interested in catching and punishing kids, except as that enhances the deterrent. It's the deterrent you want. You don't want that stuff. So anyway, that's been my focus, is this immediate question: what can we do as a school district to reduce risk? And risk is a difficult concept, as we all know. It's not a certainty; it's a risk. But we want to reduce the risk. There are a lot of things we can't do, and I think Mrs. Cordero talked about, mentioned that too, that there a lot of the things you'd like to see happening are beyond our reach. But there are things we can do, and my approach was a little different. I would think that it would be extremely useful for us to, as an opener, to bring in a security consultant and do a risk analysis of our campuses. And I got that idea watching the coverage of Virginia Tech. And not that they were, they were buried in grief, but the talking heads on television, the experts that were being interviewed, a couple of them that was what they did. They did risk analyses of educational institutions. Well, that's an interesting idea. If there's a body, if there are skills and experience that can be brought to bear on us, we need to know that. How much exposure do we have at our campuses? It may be that we're in better shape than my worst fears, which would be nice. But they can pinpoint that, and so I would like to see us consider that possibility. Yeah, I have that in my top two proposals. At the earliest time, retain a professional security consultant who will recommend immediate measures. One, to reduce risk of weapons being brought on campuses, and number two, to enclose campuses and restrict access by non-students. Now, I have one other idea that I mentioned this, and Mrs. Harder was familiar with it. In my browsing around, I ran onto the work by James Wilson 20 years ago that he and a colleague at Harvard who invented or created the broken windows theory, which I've subsequently learned was that presidential candidate whose name I can, oh yes. He hired a man named Braddock, I think, to come into New York and take over the subway, the Port Authority, I guess, police system, and thus started the get 'em, nip it in the bud kind of approach to eliminate all of the small and any size indication that there's less than a complete public order. It has to do with public order. What are the symbols of a breakdown in public order? Graffiti, little laws being broken. Aside from the fact that sometimes the guys who break little laws break big laws, the theory has to do much more with creating an environment that communicates order. As a liberal, I've never made the argument for kind of coming from an order point of view before, but the results look very impressive. And you know, and I know Dr. Sarvis has walked in Times Square because I've walked there with him. Do you remember when you couldn't? Because I sure as hell do. It wasn't long ago. And you certainly couldn't walk on 42nd Street, and you can. And you know, I'm a little reticent still to go into Central Park at night, but people do, who would never have done it 15 years ago. And the same thing is happening in communities all around the country, where this is kind of the prevailing now paradigm for public safety in many countries, in many communities. I think Braddock is now the chief of police in Los Angeles, is he not?
Yes, but it's not. That's not the right name.
Not the same guy.
No, it is the same guy. It's the exact same guy you're talking, but the name's not quite right, and I
Yeah.
can't get it.
Okay, I agree with that. Anyway, that leads me to think I would love to have someone who really is good at that, knows how to walk into a scene and read the symbolism. What's the message coming across about is this a place where public order prevails, or is this a place where you can kind of push it here and ignore it there? I'd love to see someone go onto a high school campus and do that. And I don't know who would do it. I presume if you set out to find them, you could find the expertise. But I'd like to see a broken windows type analysis of a high school campus. Which reminds me,
Ms. Harder, could I just interrupt for 1 second? This seems like a lengthy discussion that Dr. Noel is sharing, and I'm just, since we're going to have to come back to it because we want to have it on the agenda again for a fuller discussion with information from the city as well, and in light of the time, and we have 8 items we have to go back to off the consent agenda, I'm wondering if we can move forward and come back to this discussion.
I really resent that kind of an implication. I asked to have this item put on the agenda. I sat very quietly and politely and listened to each of you talk, and now I'd like to express the views that are prepared to present here tonight. What does it mean for a board member to ask for and receive an item on an agenda if it doesn't mean a chance to?
I'm sorry, Dr. Noel. I thought you were done, and we had 30 minutes scheduled for this, and we've exceeded that already. So I thought that we had used our time.
It sounded to me, Dr. Noel, like you were winding down.
I was on the way, but now I've lost my train of thought because I was so rudely interrupted. Well,
Do you,
I was.
no, I don't want to get into a dispute.
Okay.
Do you have some concluding remarks to remake, or would you like to save them for another time? You mentioned 3 initiatives, and you were on the third, so I thought.
I was talking about the broken windows.
Correct.
And I was going to point out, incidentally, graffiti are one of the signs, right? I think, Mr. Turnbull, your campus is pretty clean about that. Did a good job. But then I remembered there was a $2 million on the Measure V initial list, $2 million item to fix the windows at Santa Barbara High School. Now, they're not broken windows, but one of the items that Mr. Hetnock explained was there were a lot of them were scratched up with graffiti.
Lots of them are etched, and they were replaced, and many of them are etched again.
Well, thus the broken windows theory. I thought that was a fitting note in which to end until I was deprived of the moment I had, just the moment.
I hope that one was satisfactory. We need to return to our consent agenda. I believe that staff has a lot of information there to follow up on. I see Mrs. Kiani nodding her head up and down. No, we're on to our consent agenda, item D4. No, we're not doing E5. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're fine.
I pulled D4, and I pulled it basically because I wasn't here a year ago, and I just want a little background on this. What was the purpose of having a 1-year period for recording closed sessions? Was that just, I wasn't sure if that was like a trial balloon to see if it was a good thing, or if it was just, what was the purpose of the 1 year?
Oh, Mr. Price, you might be the best person to recap this.
There was a convergence, really, of 2 events that brought it about. The first was that in the spring of last year, there were some board issues that were generated that had to do with what was said or what wasn't said in closed session. And after quite a bit of board discussion, the idea was floated and ultimately adopted so that there would not be any room for debate on that subject later, that board sessions would be recorded, at least for a period of time. During the course of that discussion, as a result of some things that happened, there was there was a threat of a Brown Act lawsuit, and before that ever came to reality, it was settled for a small sum and an agreement to do that which the board had already indicated that it wished to do of its own initiative, and that was to record closed sessions. The agreement that was reached, that was approved by the board, since this is not something that had been done in the past, was that the recording would occur for a minimum period of 1 year, meaning after that time it was up to the board to determine whether or not it wished to continue.
I think it's important to add that that the district attorney, in his judgment about the number of issues that were raised at that time, placed great emphasis on the fact that the district had adopted that policy on its own and saw it as essentially resolving a set of problems. He didn't put a time limit of a year in terms of the concept that he was employing in that judgment.
Okay, any further discussion? Then is there a motion on item D4?
I move to to delete the item.
Is there a second?
Would we, I'm sorry, would we move to delete, or would we
Well,
just move to reject,
I
to not approve?
I guess. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think it's a very small cost to pay, and that it has beneficial effects, and I'd like to see it go away.
You mean you'd like to see it continue, and you'd like to see this item go away?
I'd like to see the idea of stopping the recording go away and just continue recording. Boy, that's about as indirect a way as you could.
Is there a second for Dr. Noel's motion? Another motion to entertain then perhaps by someone. Then I will make a motion to adopt resolution number 0708-08, resolution to discontinue tape recording of closed session proceedings.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
No.
So it's 3-2. So people wish to continue tape recording. Okay. Do you have that? The motion maker and the...
Can I ask a question here?
Certainly.
When we started tape recorder, we realized that it was inappropriate to be tape recording the portion about expulsions. Can I make a motion that we at least exclude that from this?
So, in other words, discontinue taping expulsion?
Wasn't there a ruling on that? Didn't we get an advisory on that issue?
Well,
I'll second your motion.
We had simply, we had simply chosen to tape record closed session, and we didn't differentiate between items.
Okay.
So
It seems to me inappropriate to include that as part of this, but did you want?
Well, I understand the rules. I'm sorry, Mr. President.
No, you go ahead.
I just wanted, I'm sure you're going to explain it, the rules under which anyone has access to the tape.
Okay, 2 points then. The first point is there isn't any legal guidance that would make it inappropriate to tape record a closed session for an expulsion hearing. There may be policy grounds for doing that, which are similar to the whole question of whether you want to tape record closed sessions. But getting to Dr. Noel's point, there is extremely limited access on anyone's part to a tape recording of a closed session. It is limited to when there is a court proceeding and a judge makes an in-camera or in-chambers review with respect to issues that arise that are pertinent to what was or what wasn't said. That's the only time that it can happen.
My point was more that when a parent came in, or if now the way it is, if there were a supplementary hearing of some sort and a parent came in and a student, it felt uncomfortable, I'll put it that way, to put a tape recorder out there and a mic that they were being, because then we'd have to explain this whole thing that, no, this is only for a judge. And it just seems to me like something we should, if we could, at least exclude that portion.
Except that in deference to the new and more formalized procedures that the board is following, if the board is going to meet with parents, that is, as you put it, a supplemental hearing, and the Ed Code actually requires that discussion, that hearing, be recorded. So I would think that any further desire on the part of the board to parse out expulsion hearings and for separate treatment, you'd want to have that come back to you. But I don't think it's a very good idea to not record expulsion hearings, because in certain cases, at least, when you are not merely deliberating among yourselves, you have to, meaning when you bring people in. And I think Mr. Gonzalez agrees with me.
Okay. Well, then I will take back my motion.
I'll withdraw my second.
Moving on to item D11, it's approval to apply for the California Department of Education Teacher Recruitment and Retention Program.
I asked to pull that only because I wanted to know, I'm confused about this July 1st, 2007 starting period. Does that mean that this has already been submitted, or?
No, it hasn't been. That's the first time you could do it. We got it over the summer. This is actually a continuing, it says one time only. We had funds before. Harding is newly involved in this, and so it's a small amount, but it's, we got to carry over some of the funds from last year. So I will apply as soon
Thank you.
as.
I move to approve D11.
So motion by Dr. Noel, second by Ms. Malakoff. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item D11 is approved. Item D16, I pulled for information only. I would love to know how many homeless students are in each district, which schools, and some general idea of their performance levels. Below basic, basic? Is that difficult information to acquire? I mean, we see this money being spent, but we really, I mean, we see very specific information about English language learners, for instance. No. Board brief would be fantastic. So a motion to approve item D16. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item D17, the personnel action items.
I had one question about it. Under certificated appointments, toward the bottom of the list, it's on the top of the second page of this section. There's the next bottom line: teacher, general fund, Cleveland Elementary, $71,968, new money, not currently budgeted.
I'm sorry, where is it on the list?
What's the name? Oh, Patrice.
Patrice Warwick.
It's this one.
Warwick?
I don't understand where the money's coming from.
It says the general fund.
Actually, you know, this is interesting the way this is written. They did not increase any, there's no impact on the general fund in the way this person, Patrice, is a new position that's going into the classroom that is taking the place of a teacher who was in the 3rd grade classroom who is moving to the Waterford lab.
And that teacher is 4 lines up, 3 lines up? No? Oh, no, that wouldn't be in a new position.
No, she's not, she wouldn't be on here.
I see.
What has
And
happened
who- and
often
what-
in the
and-
past is that a teacher who is more expensive will be shifted around so that the general fund pays for it. In this case, this more expensive, experienced teacher is in the Waterford lab. It's for a year to
And
try
what fund
this.
pays that salary?
The categorical funds from the site
I see. Well, so the general fund,
actually save some money in this case.
yeah. So that amount is still in the general fund to pay this new teacher?
Yes.
So it's not new?
Yes. In
Okay.
fact, there's a bit of
Okay.
a savings.
I got it. All right, thank you very much. I move to approve D17.
Second.
Oh, that was Ms. Cordero, so Noel and Cordero. All those in favor of approving D17 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I asked about D18.
Okay, was that an aye from everyone?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Item D18, Santa
asked-
Barbara Legal Consortium
I asked
membership.
about that simply because we had a budget item somewhere in that budget that Mr. Diaz presented. That I think it added up to over 250,000 or more in total in legal services, and I don't quite understand what this one is in that context. I mean, this is in addition to?
This is our
all of our
basic
other-
contract with Liebert Cassidy, and then they indicate a fee scale for those things that go beyond the basic services that they,
Oh, we pay hourly beyond the basic.
correct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve item D18.
Second.
Thank you. So it's Parker and Cordero. All those in favor of approving item D18 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. Sorry, my thoughts are on another.
Okay, that's okay. So that was 5-0. Item D21, the Southern California Regional Liability Excess Fund. Question?
He meant not to. He said he changed his mind.
About.
Yeah.
But we still have to vote on it.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah. I
Okay.
move to approve.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that's D21. D22, approval of employee training, Keenan Defensive Driver Awareness Training.
I pulled that one. I just had questions about how many employees are going to participate in this training and how do you select which employees are going to be participating?
Mrs. Parker, members of the board, these would be our employees who currently drive vehicles in maintenance and grounds.
Mm-hmm. How many is that?
I'm going to say off the top of my head, 25.
So they'll all be able to participate?
They'll all be able, they're all expected to participate. We've had more accidents than we should have had lately, and this is one of our measures to promote some defensive driving skills and driver education to help bring that down.
Okay, great. I move to approve item D22.
So that was a second by Noel. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 5-0. D23, approval of Vavrnik, Trine, and Day.
I asked about that one.
Mhm.
I have a question. That is, what is the time frame of this? Is this work yet to be done, or work is done, or what?
This is work that is in progress, Dr. Noel, and probably will continue through the closing process. And they always include, as part of their service offerings, management consulting, and the district in the past has always used them at closing and at other times as needed throughout the year.
This is our auditing firm, right?
This is the management consulting division of the auditing firm, and these are the people that were working for the information that was presented.
Do they have
tonight.
firewalls between that division and?
Absolutely.
Because that was my note here was.
No,
you don't hire your auditor to come in and do management services.
Completely different divisions, and that don't audit. These folks, Jim Balsamo, is a senior partner who heads up the management consulting division. He does do no auditing, and nor does anyone in his division. It's a completely separate
I had a question about this one too, and that was just the $15,000 on the general fund. We have a consulting budget. I assume this just comes from it. What is the consulting budget? Is this something that's going to
I don't have that. It's an as-needed, Ms. Parker, things like that typically are as-needed. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head that we have a specific consultant budget because I don't know. You never know when you're going to need them. And that would be another one of those zero-based rollover types of arguments you could make or discussions to have. But this was required for the current situation that we brought them in to help with.
And you let this contract at when? How long ago?
They began their work on August 6th, Dr. Noel.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve item D23.
Second.
All those in favor of approving item D23 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. D24, California Education Computer Consortium.
Every year when this, I asked this, every year when this one comes by and we shell out huge amounts of money, I have to ask the question, I guess I've asked it more recently than a year ago. Why are we spending this money? Why are we not having why are we not looking seriously at the county option?
We are.
We are, Dr. Noel. In fact, the board approved earlier in the summer a study by Castleberg and Associates to determine the exact mechanics of such a move and the timetable for such a move. We would be required by our contract with CECC to give them a year's notice as we began the disengagement, but this is a front burner item for me as well because it's just far too costly. The county is, from my perspective, a better option, and it would be my intent to have by January 1st. I might be overly optimistic. I would like
the
to.
study you're referring to, it'd be.
No, by January 1st, I'd like to be able to give them notice that we're going to be moving.
When's the study going to be?
Starting the end of this month.
Oh, it's not started yet.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we should attach a rider on this that says this is, yes, we approve it and give notice.
You know,
a little extra incentive.
I'll tell you, I'll share a thought with you. I am of the, and I mentioned this to the superintendent, was so exasperated by this whole cost of this that I went to the county and said, why don't we just move now? What is a downside to just giving them notice today and start to move now? I can't, frankly, see any. And the cost is excessive, and
yeah, 150,000.
Oh, that's
actually
just
this
half
is lower.
of it.
This is lower.
That's just part of it. That doesn't include the
you'd better-
consultants and the.
You'd better describe the county's answer, though.
The county is not ready for us.
Ah.
The county's not ready for us, and the piece of it is the consolidation. And I said, well, what about if we just came as 2 districts? Just go back to the 2-district format. That was a different story.
So
that's
it's
easier.
it's the combination. It's
We're
the
wondering.
combined.
The president's about to rule us out of
Thank
order.
you.
I know.
Thank you.
I excuse me.
Mr. Diaz, your recommendation on this is to approve it.
Yes.
Is that is accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Not much choice. I move to approve it, but
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
Second.
as I say, I always have to raise the issue.
Okay, so Noel and then Cordero. I think 2 people were on their mics at the same time. All those in favor of approving item D24 signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Now D28. That's me. Okay. Santa Barbara Electrical Design.
This is about Mr. Hetnyonk, about the
Cabling and telephone
Yeah,
system
telephone service. And
replacement.
this is a safety issue and having telephones in classrooms. And I'm just curious, maybe it's a longer question about what we have in different classrooms, and do we have intercom systems? Do we have telephones in different classrooms? And can I just ask, first of all, what does this particular thing, does this give us a phone? Does this give a phone to each classroom in these elementary schools?
Yes, this will provide phones to the classrooms that don't have phones, and we are going after E-rate money to offset those costs as a match, which is why we're bringing this item.
Okay.
And this is the design to enable us to go out to bid. And you'll see by the memo that some sites, like Washington, that wouldn't qualify for E-rate funding, we can put a new phone system in Franklin in a district expense without matching funds, take that phone system and move it over to Washington. However, again, to put a phone in every classroom is going to take some other funds for the cabling for Washington without being matched by E-rate.
Do we have schools that do not have phones? After this, will we have any schools that don't have phones?
After this, we will have a phone in every classroom, I think.
In the elementary school district or in both?
I think we have phones in every classroom in the secondary district.
We do.
And there may be 1 or 2 rooms out there, but they're beyond what I'm aware of. I'm not swearing that every classroom has or teaching station has a phone, but our intent is to have one.
Excellent. Do some schools have an intercom system as well?
Some schools have intercoms, some schools do not have intercoms. Some schools have one-way intercoms, some schools have two-way intercoms. There is no E-rate money available for intercom systems. If the board wanted to consider that once we've gone down our I-98 priority list and there's money left over, that's an appropriate discussion for that time.
One more question, I'll get. Is there a connection between the office and these phones, other than they have to dial a number? Is that right? Or it's not like there's any other connection?
This would be a phone system,
just
which
like
would be similar to what we have here, where you have a main number and then extensions.
Oh, okay.
The voice over internet allows you to reduce the number of lines that we pay to the phone company each month, and so it's a much more cost-effective system.
Thank you. I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. So it's Malakoff Parker. All those in favor of approving item D28 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. We've taken care of item G. Item H is coming events. I believe we covered it. School starts.
Item K. Oh, you're not that far.
No, we're not there yet. Nice try, though. I have board correspondence. Anything? Board comments. Any comments? Future agenda items, I believe.
Yes.
Yes?
I would like to carry on with that earlier request that the fiscal or / budget information policy be put on the agenda. And I'd like to see it on that same agenda that discusses the budget.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Cordero?
That may actually have addressed my concern. I just wanted to make sure, or to request that the discussion of the budget and the discussion of the budget process be two separate agenda items.
I think that was my intention.
Okay.
I think I indicated that earlier. If I wasn't clear, I apologize.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And I would hope that the discussion of the budget will be agendized in such a way that we may be able to make motions as to the possible disposition of funds.
Also my intention. Yes.
Yeah.
That, okay.
Thank you.
And that the process include an update on the committee that we were going, a budget committee.
Well, that's going to be on our next agenda.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's
On our August 28th agenda. Okay. So we have reached item K.
Item K is corrected to read August 28th.
Yes.
Tuesday, August
Okay.
28th.
Okay. Our next board meeting is August 28th. Okay, then this meeting's adjourned.